Welcome to episode 158 of the Collector's Quest podcast. On this episode, our goal was to find the most expensive, most common game. Because sometimes you see a game that sells for like $200 and you're like, that is bananas. There are 10 million of those out there, but there's so much demand that that's selling for $200, which is what I always thought about like Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Ultimately, though, this is 2 hours of us going through NES through N64, Game Boy through GBA, all the prices of all the most popular games. So even if you don't care about the most expensive, most common games, it could just be a refresher and a discussion on current prices of all the most popular Nintendo games. So tell your mom about the show, give us 5 stars on iTunes, go to patreon.com/collectorsquest if you'd like to donate to the show, which is something that we just launched, and let's go. Back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Just Johnny. What's going on, Guy?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing just fine, Johnny.
It's nice to have lights and power again. This is nice.
I was told Stefan doesn't have lights and power again.
No, not every area is fixed yet. Hopefully his will be coming back on. It's such a bullshit reason, too. In our area, because our power company was responsible for this huge fire that like burned a bunch of homes and lots of acreage in Southern California. It was a huge fire and, it was billions of dollars in damages. So now what they do to fix the problem rather than fixing the equipment and making sure that kind of thing can't happen again, they just turn off everyone's power when it gets really windy and they think that a fire could happen.
That seems crazy to me. Because we live in the future of 2021. Street Fighter 2020 has come and gone, and the power grid can't stand wind.
Yeah, like lines could fall down in, like, Southern California is a mess. Just like, not enough rain, dry land, any spark, and the wind, like, the wind can make this happen with the power lines, and we don't know what to do. You're like, well, I don't know. Maybe, like, you keep raising our rates, maybe invest into the infrastructure and can fix that. I don't know. Or no, maybe turn off everyone's power for like 2 and 3 days at a time. And like all of my food expires and I got to go throw it in the trash and then buy a couple $100 worth of groceries again. Love that kind of stuff. It's the best.
It's great to have to go out more during a giant pandemic in America too.
So yeah, it is. It really is. Like, I'm like trying to do my order on like drive up for stores and stuff. And they're like, ooh, no, we're out of everything because everybody else was doing the same thing. And you're like, okay, so I guess we have to use all this food that's expiring, except my oven is like great and also stupid at the same time. So it has like an electric ignition and then it regulates. So it turns on and off while it's cooking. So I can't actually turn on my oven. I can only use the burners, which also has an electric start. So I got to like have a lighter and like, like
a caveman.
Yeah, exactly. But that means any of my foodstuffs that I would think to like cook in the oven that's going to expire, I can't even do that. I can only do stovetop, and then it's getting dark early and then I'm, a toddler. So it's like trying to cook by candlelight and stuff. It was really dumb. It's dumb, and SoCal Edison is dumb, and Stefan hates them more than I do because he always gets it worse.
I don't remember.
So that's where Stefan is.
I don't remember if Stefan posted it publicly on his YouTube account or what, but he had me edit a video for him. It was just him sitting at a traffic light that was off because the power's off. Like, even the traffic lights are off when the power's off. He sits there for like 2 minutes and a car crash happens like right there because everyone was blowing the light. And he's like, "F you, Edison." It's a pretty good video.
Yeah. So, for instance, if I have to go, like, I live in an area, like, once you get out of my little, like, the little street part, like the suburban part, and get into like the city proper where, businesses are and stuff, there's like a million lights. And so they're all 4-way stops. So for me to go like 2 miles, it took me 20 minutes because nobody knows how to use a 4-way stop. And then it's like, I had to be out at like 4:30 in the afternoon. Like, so everyone's like, the get home traffic has started. It was ridiculous. 4-way stops, all the lights out. People don't know what the to do. So yeah, it's amazing.
We need to teach people how to drive in this country. Everyone's a bad driver except for me, Johnny.
No, everyone is kind of a bad driver and no one knows what to do at a 4-way stop.
I guess that's also true.
I'm not like excising myself from that group. I'm saying everyone, including me, probably bad drivers, but I do know what to do at a 4-way stop. Anyways, that's what's going on. No one gives a shit about that.
Sure.
You know, they're
just
like,
cut
hey,
all that out, Johnny.
Yeah, like, why weren't you at work today? Wind. It's, other places are like, we're snowed in, but we're doing fine. We're working. Everything's going as planned. Why weren't you at work today? Wind. That's it. We can't take the wind here in Southern California.
Johnny, we've got, speaking of Southern California, do you know who lives in Southern California? Red the Game Shark, friend of the show.
Oh, Cheap Games. Man, we have not advertised him very much lately. He's very annoyed with us.
Yeah. One of, I think 3 people who, like, immediately, once we put up the Famicom show, messaged us with corrections and additional information, which we are going to talk about right now.
Woo, do it.
2 of the games we brought up were Abadox and Shatterhand, or whatever the Japanese version of Shatterhand is. I didn't write it down. But a connection we didn't make is that those are both Natsume games. And Natsume games before Harvest Moon, which everyone loves Harvest Moon, I am told, and I won't name names, but Daddy Mulks told this to me, so if this is wrong, you can blame him. They're kind of like an underappreciated hidden gem-ish company before Harvest Moon, kind of like how we would view treasure games. So all of the old Natsume games are kind of expensive. And indeed, I went and looked up other Famicom Natsume games. The 3-eyed one, Chaos World Kage, which is Shadow of the Ninja, Idle Hakenden, which is just some text adventure with like some girly graphics it looks like, Final Mission, which is Scat, and all of them are like $100 to $300. So we totally failed to make that connection.
You know, it's weird because we talked about a bunch of those games individually and said, like, and then cut them off. Because remember, we were going to talk about a few of those and then didn't. Like, they didn't make the final list. That's funny. We didn't even had more information and we didn't get it right.
Yeah.
Go us.
Well, I thought that was interesting. And then the other correction, or I guess the other thing he told me was that release dates specifically in Japan for older stuff are documented much better than in America. At least going back to Famicom and MSX. Really? So he showed me a book called Game 19XX. But there will be other sources with this information. And that's got MSRPs and release dates for just a whole bunch of, just like all the old Famicom stuff, like specific days. Another fun fact, on Japanese CDs, if you flip them over to the back, they have the specific release date printed on the back. Or if they're not on the back, it's on the spine card sometimes. And I looked at a few, and that blew my mind. I'm sure, like, that date was probably not always, like, the date. Maybe it was, like, kind of a release window, and that was, like, the target date. But that's still a pretty cool thing, I think.
That is cool. Yeah, and the United States did have, like, release windows for when things were coming out. But now we have, like, hard and fast the day, you know? This is the day. There's no windows unless you're a console manufacturer trying to tell you what games are coming out when a system launches. Then they'll talk to you about a launch window, not a launch date. They'll be like, this launch window of 2 years, so they can say, look how many launch titles we have. Look how good they are. Come buy our system.
I mean,
shitbags.
Yes, but also at the same time, for like printed dates on a physical object, most people don't care if it came out on July 1st or the first week of July. It's just some guy who's printing a date on a CD.
Yes, of course.
But immediately, that of course makes me think of stamps, because a controversial practice in stamps
the other thing
is that when you...
that Red brought up, I'm going to save you guys all from any more stamp talk, unless you really got to get it out of you.
No, you could cut me off. That'll be great.
Okay, perfect. So we also said, please add us about Popeye because we don't understand what's going on. And so what Red told us is that the magazine we referenced, it started in the 70s, and I'll just read his text. It started in the 70s as a snapshot of Los Angeles during that time for young men, targeted Japanese youth and showing them what was hip as far as fashion and youth interests were back then. It used Popeye in a few of the covers. The reason the guy named the magazine Popeye, because his son was a big fan. In 1930s, Popeye was insanely popular, way more popular than Mickey Mouse. It was like when Mario was the most popular and recognized character years later. Coincidence that Mario was originally supposed to be the Popeye, or supposed to be Popeye, question mark. So that's him speculating. But as with a lot of things that got popular in Asia, World War II had a lot to do with it. Sorry, got to go to the next screenshot here. With the U.S. occupation of Japan following World War II and subsequent stations during the Korean War, the Army brought over entertainment for troops, and that was in part of the form of cartoons. Popeye was still insanely popular because the soldiers there grew up fascinated by Popeye as children, and the cartoons were comforting. The cartoons were popular in Japan as well. It's like how Spam is a luxury item in Asia, even though here no one likes it. Following World War II, American imports were the rage, and Popeye was seen as the American's American, like a weird interpretation of American is apple pie almost. Snoopy is another popular old American comic cartoon that also has insane popularity in Japan. I don't even think it's called Peanuts in Japan. I think it's literally called Snoopy, he says. Snoopy started showing up on merch all over Japan in the 70s when it was hip to be into American stuff and people loved his design. That goes back to Popeye, the magazine. That was popular because it showed people what city boys in Los Angeles were doing and wearing as part of the association of Popeye and cool were established in part from the magazine, even though it wasn't about Popeye. I think Korea had something similar happen too. I remember seeing Korean live action Popeye movies as a kid, even though the guy playing Popeye wasn't anything like Popeye or American. He says it was weird, and he still has some of the VHSs of the Korean Popeye from the 90s. Anyways, thank you, Red, very much for the Popeye information. So, just cultural iconography that, landed in Japan as a way of, Americanism. So that got popular. Another thing we got shown, if you didn't see, I just want to throw out real quick, check out Braveheart, the real Braveheart on Instagram. He went ahead and posted the Game Gear Popeye volleyball, if you haven't seen, which is pretty rare, kind of expensive, around $300 if you are interested in your own complete copy. So you can check that out as well. That's what we got. Popeye. Thanks, Red, for all of the additional information and corrections. And insight. We'll say insight, information, and corrections. Yeah, that sounds good.
On topic follow-up, there is an exclusive Snoopy Famicom game that we did not get in America. But on the other hand, Snoopy Silly Sports Spectacular was released in Japan as Donald Duck. I thought they liked Snoopy. What's going on there?
I don't know. We don't know enough about other countries and what they do because we are Americans.
Second fact, Snoopy Silly Sports Spectacular would be on my list for most obscure NES game that just absolutely no one ever talks about.
Yeah. That's fair. Is that I think I hear more about Spot than I do Snoopy.
Sure. Because Spot, you'll always see, if there's a lot of a bunch of junk games, you'll usually just see Spot in there, and that reminds you that exists. But Snoopy Silly Sports Spectacular, I don't know if it's just because it's really long or it's kind of uncommon or what. Not something you think about. When I tried to think of the most obscure NES game, I did it as a mental exercise and I came up with Galactic Crusader. I might have said that on the show. Game absolutely no one talks about and almost no one has beat because it's pretty freaking hard.
Yeah, that would be pretty obscure.
There was on the unlicensed, beat every unlicensed Nintendo Age thread back in the day. I think Galactic Crusader was one of the ones that one person beat or absolutely no one beat. So, pretty obscure game. I don't know why we're talking
darts.
About Galactic Crusader. How do we get here?
I don't know.
Popeye to Snoopy to Donald Duck. All right.
Yeah, there's a thread there. Follow it if you can, everybody.
Johnny, Now that we are 15 minutes into the episode, I want to start with the thing we start the episode with before we get into the real topic.
Oh, post-show banter? Bullshit.
It's on topic, almost. It's the impetus for this show.
Okay.
No, I don't want to get there yet. Johnny, there were some stupid Heritage Auction sales. We don't always talk about this. I do want to talk about a little because it is on topic. And I do want to preface this by saying nothing that sells on Heritage Auctions makes any sense, and nothing there should be taken seriously at all. Not a thing most of our viewers or listeners will need to be primed on, I think. Just for example, last month, less than a month ago, Atari Space Invaders, the same stupid late print variant I always complain about, sold for $660. And then a week ago, a case of 6 sealed copies sold for $330. So what is that, an 8 times decrease in price in less than a month? Makes total sense. Everything on Heritage Auctions makes total sense. The GTA Trilogy games are still selling. They're selling for over like $500 now.
Why?
Because Heritage Auctions is the place where people have more money than brains, and like they have all the money and none of the knowledge. It's like the gap seems like it's widening as time goes on. It's crazy. So all the same junk happening. Like Mario games, all it's Zelda selling for like tens of thousands of dollars. You know what's going on? A Donkey Kong sold for $70,000. Remember that, actually. Donkey Kong sold for $70,000. I'm going to bring that up again during our actual topic. Some more interesting stuff. There was a Player's Choice Pokemon GBA game that sold for $2,000. Freaking Player's Choice. Harry Potter on PS1, $3,000. Harry Potter sold for more than Hurricanes on Super Nintendo. And if you don't know, Hurricanes on Super Nintendo, pretty hard to find game at all. Like,
Harry Potter, I'm in touch with the Harry Potter scene. Cause I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll get like a sealed PS1. And I've been looking at them and they were going for like $100 to $200 and then like $300 on eBay. And then that one sold and I was just like, okay, world, never mind.
Well, you forgot to weigh one fact in that it's people who don't know anything about video games have still heard of Harry Potter, Johnny.
I didn't forget that. I just didn't think that we would go from like $200, $100 to thousands.
Yeah. X-Men vs. Street Fighter sold for $5,000. I don't know what that's about, but I'm assuming just because it says X-Men, but maybe that's like the super hot PS1 game. Weird.
Tyler, I also want to, you said more money than brains. And I want to just encourage people, yourself included, to say more money than sense, because it sounds like sense. It's kind of like a portmanteau. Yeah. So you get some wordplay in there. And you get the same thing going. You get the same impact with a little wordplay. I like it.
I like it too, John. All right, I'm not going to say it again this episode. I don't want to make it sound like people are dumb, even when they're dumb. I don't want to say that they don't have brains, but they clearly don't have knowledge of the market they're buying things in. It's just blatant dumb manipulation that people are spending thousands of dollars to do to try to trick the people they think don't have brains. It's all just very confusing.
Let me devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
If you are in this market and you've seen the way other markets move, right? And you've heard and you've talked to people and you're in this little insular bubble and you're hearing from them and, you're acting the way that group acts because you think the market forces are pushing or pulling this way and that will be that. And you have money, you can afford to speculate. You can say it cost this now, but in a year or 6 months, maybe it's cheap on eBay. But once this sale happens, all those all those other prices are now going to go away because this is the new establishing dominant price and that friction will cause all those other prices to be erased. And eventually we'll get to where I am and I have enough money to sit and wait and I will make a profit in 6 months to a year by paying this. Look, I don't think it's a smart buy out of the gate, but I can see, especially if they're not like really using eBay as the thing, which their buying apparatus, if they're only into like heritage auctions and graded copies and sealed copies that are certified, then that's their marketplace, and that's a lot different than our marketplace.
Sure. And I don't want to just...
and that's not, look, and I'm not, I want everyone to just know I'm devil's advocating there. I don't agree with this. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm just trying to see that side, even though I think just like know more about games and be ahead of that curve, not bleeding into the future of pricing. That's not where I want to be.
So I'm not complaining about the absolute prices more than the relative prices. Like if you think a game is so hard to find that it's worth $5,000 more than it was worth yesterday for some reason, that's fine. It's just so another one, kind of one that got the most press, if there is press for this thing. A God of War sold for $10,000. It was the second print. So I don't remember. God of War released in 2005, which was right at the end of Sony's security strips. So God of War probably printed throughout the late 2000s. Like that would be a game that people want to buy as long as PS2 exists. There are very many late print God of Wars that are sealed. So it makes no sense to spend $10,000 for a game that like Rare Bucky was selling bundled with God of War 2, if I remember, for like $100, maybe $200.
Remember we talked about this. Remember when we did the draft show? We talked about God of War. Like, should we be buying God of War?
Oh,
and I guess the answer.
Well, I mean,
yes.
I didn't buy it because I don't like God of War. It's a stupid game. Because
it's the kids as a collector. Shut up. That's as collectors. It doesn't matter if we like games. It doesn't matter if it's a good game. My personal preference on a game doesn't matter. And we also made the point during that draft show that some of the best games and the games we like the most aren't expensive at all in new systems because they are plentiful and they sold well.
So that's another thing that's going to come up on this show, Johnny.
Oh, is it?
But also, just going back to the God of War thing, I can enjoy a game in my collection that I haven't played, like Space Adventure on Sega CD. I will probably never play that. Still think it's a cool collectible. God of War, like even like if I bought like a $60 sealed copy 2 years ago, like it wouldn't make me happy because I've played it and I think it's kind of meh. So I just wouldn't like it as much. If I never played God of War, I'd be like, wow, that's a super popular game. I'd love to have that in my collection.
Wow. Your biases are strange.
That's just the way I am, Johnny. Two more. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Actually, the real security strip version, maybe a first print. I'm not sure if there's more print runs. I mean, GTA San Andreas is such a popular game. Sold for $10,000. Price doesn't really make any sense, but at least it's the correct version. And then a Gran Turismo 1 also sold for $10,000. You might know it as the best-selling PlayStation 1 game. All kind of crazy.
I just want to throw this out there. I hate Gran Turismo games. I just hate them. I just find them so tedious and not entertaining. It's just like... it's a car RPG, and I'm not into that. And it's the worst kind of repetitive grinding. Not into it. It
is super weird for me to boot up Forza Horizon and you start out with like awesome cars and you get more awesome cars right away, when I remember grinding in GT2 with like a stupid Fiat, and then I'd upgrade to like a Honda Civic, and it was just like garbage cars for hours and hours. I loved it, man.
Yeah, I was in the Air Force, and we had like a common like living room area of our barracks, right? So I went in there and I'm sitting in there, and these guys were playing Gran Turismo on the PlayStation 1. They're like, "Man, come here, Ayuchi, check this out." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll go check this out." They're like, "Man, this game is amazing." And I remember sitting there for about 25 minutes going, I think I hate this. And then I got a copy for myself. I'm like, hey, no, everyone loves it. They say it's great. Like, I must be wrong. And then playing it for a little while, I'm like, nope, I hate this. I hate this game. I don't enjoy anything about this.
You like Mario Kart, though.
I do like Mario Kart.
How many kinds of racing games are there? See, I like really arcadey racers, and I like sim racers, but I don't like kart racers. Maybe there's like some kind of triangle going on where you can figure out your tastes.
I don't like too many race games. Like, I liked Rad Racer, and I really liked RC Pro-Am as a kid. So that was cool. And I liked Off-Road. Those were okay. And then I didn't like any of the serious race games. If it was too serious, wasn't into it. When I was very young, I liked Pole Position in the arcade. But after that, I kind of...
Contender for the best arcade game, best early arcade game, but I'm sorry, it's Outrun.
Yeah. Game over, yeah. Aside for that, I can't think of too many racers after that I enjoyed, because Super Nintendo was just okay, I'm playing Mario Kart. I didn't really play any other race games. And then PlayStation 1, I tried stupid Gran Turismo and hated it. And then after that, it was just okay, I'll play Mario Kart. That's fine. Thanks.
All right, Johnny, I want to get back to my point before we get even more off topic. I'm not just listing a bunch of crazy pie in the sky numbers from Heritage Auctions. I didn't write it down, but Persona 2, after all this nonsense, Persona 2, which I totally recognize is not a super rare game sealed, but it is one of the 10 most expensive PS1 games. Within reason, I know there's crazy, rare, weird variants and stuff on PS1. If you look at a list of the top 10
Black Label games.
What?
Yeah. If you're talking standard Black Label.
It's right at the bottom of the top 10. Well, is it $150? Is it $250? It's something like that.
It's expensive.
It's an expensive game. In all this craziness, Persona 2 sold for $1,500. And it reminds me, and then I look at Hurricanes, it's Hurricanes sold for less than a Harry Potter game. Hurricanes is selling on par with a Player's Choice GBA Pokemon game. This is pretty strange. And the strangeness is that in this section of the market, the most common games in the most exceptional condition, which I'm just going to say basically anything sealed. I don't care about the grade. Just sealed games that are the most common are the most expensive. Sometimes to in crazy degrees, like with Super Mario 3. And I don't know any other hobby where that's the case. And maybe there is, and I'm just not familiar, but stamps. Let's go back to stamps, Johnny.
Oh boy.
There's two main ways to collect stamps, I would say. You can collect canceled stamps, or you can collect brand new stamps that are mint, basically. And you wouldn't have a stamp
You're forgetting the third way to collect stamps, which is to not at all.
Well, you can collect covers as well, which are entire pieces
just
of
ignore
postage.
Stamps, and that's the best way to collect them. Go on.
But you would never have a really cheap stamp that has been used but unused. That's the most expensive stamp there is, or a toy, to give something more comparable to video games. You wouldn't have a loose action figure that's the cheapest one of all the action figures, but it's the most expensive one when it's carded. It is a strange dichotomy, and I don't know if it's just because this market is so small and it's still figuring out what's going on, or is there going to be a flippening? All the logic, if this is going to be comic books where it's key issues and the popular characters and everything else is junk, is that the Hurricanes and the Persona 2s kind of, because that's the game that people like, and the stadium events of the world are going to probably not go down, but stay where they are compared to everything else which would come up. But I don't know, because right now it's kind of weird that the two different markets are almost entirely opposite. Right? Is it weird?
I mean, it's kind of weird. Right? I don't know, Tyler. The world is a wacky place now.
I recognize that sealed games are rare. They're rare, period. And relative to how the market is growing, there's not enough to meet demand. Still weird to me that I don't know what a Donkey Kong... Donkey Kong's even a bad example because black box games have such heat on them. Player's Choice, Pokemon GB... Everything is going up, Johnny. I don't even know.
Not everything. not Super Nintendo.
Screw Super Nintendo. Is Super Nintendo really not going up? Did I even say a single Super Nintendo game? Who cares about Super Nintendo these days?
No, well, it does. A lot of people leap to PlayStation 1. They go Nintendo and then they go PlayStation 1 because I think that's, I've always said is the dividing line, right? Super Nintendo and NES, they're kind of in the same world, and Game Boy, it's all kind of homogenized. Game Boy Color, all kind of lives there. Then 3D graphics happen, and it's like PlayStation 1 and N64 kind of start competing in that space as far as console gaming is concerned. So, I think Super Nintendo gets skipped over. I don't know when people are going to come back to Super Nintendo, but like every time there's an insane heritage auction sale, it could be Atari, it can be Nintendo, it can be PlayStation, it can be PlayStation 2, but it is never Super Nintendo.
I don't know if they have as many sealed Super Nintendo games. Like I've been like casually following. I used to be like following every auction live as it happens, but like all the big stuff is NES anyway. So yeah. I mean, they're all about first appearances and the super rare stuff, and like Super Nintendo just not as rare as early NES stuff, and it's a lot of improved NES games, not a lot of firsts.
Well, I mean, they're like Mario RPG should be going for more.
Super Mario World sold for $50,000. Like that stuff doesn't even faze me anymore. I like just remembered that. It's like, oh yeah, $50,000. It had like a B seal, which if you don't know, I'm sure a lot of our viewers or listeners are not familiar with WATA grades. A B seal is like really shitty. And it sold for $50,000.
Did it? I didn't hear that. That's still like
you didn't hear about that because what other tens of thousands of dollar nonsense is going on, Johnny?
That's true.
I don't even know how many Super Mario 3s sold.
Yeah. Who knows?
Anyway, I thought this would be related to our episode, mostly because of the crazy stuff like God of War and GTA San Andreas, games that not only aren't rare, period, some of the most common games on planet Earth, but sealed, not rare, still selling for enormous amounts of money. This was put onto our ideas doc a really long time ago. And the thing,
a very long time ago.
Before 2019, before any madness started, the thing I was thinking about specifically was Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which I don't have the numbers in front of me because we didn't look at TS games. I'm guessing they sold 20, 30 million copies, some absolutely astronomical number, but Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver have always been like solidly $100 plus games, which supply and demand wise, it is crazy that the demand is able to exceed the supply that much. Like even for loose carts of that game.
They come with the Pokewalker though too. That like really affects the price.
I mean, sure, like it's a big box game. There are things missing from it, but like the loose carts have always been super expensive too, just because
you want to get crazy expensive, go get the Walmart variants.
No, people don't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be that. I don't want to get into rarity. Kidding. I want to get into this game. There's a freaking billion of them, but there's so much demand that it's still $100 game.
Yeah, always. It just has been forever. And you'll start to see it. There's some of the newer copies too that had like the double packs where there was like store specific copies. I worry about how all that stuff is going to go. It's just going to get ugly. It's all the same game, just like this one came with some Pokeballs extra if you bought it at Target. Great.
Yep.
Cool.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.
guys.
Yeah. It's a wacky world out there. Enjoy. Before we go on, I do need to mention one. This is an actual correction, also from Red the Game Shark. So I was talking last episode. I almost said last week. Last episode about Kyle Katarn and Shadows of the Empire, and I realized Kyle Katarn is from the Jedi Knight series, but I misspoke, and Red let me know. He let me have it. He said, my Star Wars card is revoked. It's Dash Rendar. And it's funny because he was rendered so poorly in that game. Jokes. But yeah, those are both Star Wars characters from video games and a couple of books. So yeah, go play all of those games. They are fun Star Wars games. And go play Jedi Fallen Order. I think that outside of the RPGs, Knights of the Old Republic, first one, I think Jedi Fallen Order is my favorite one now.
Have you played Dark Forces? I don't think Dark Forces will change your mind. Dark Forces.
Yes, I've played Dark Forces. I forget the name. I think it wasn't Star Wars Galaxy. There was this game, and it was it's like a sim a little bit. Like you could take over planets. I forget the name of it. I was not very computer savvy at the time when I was younger, and you just like took over. You could be the Empire, and you could imagine like Warcraft 2, but Star Wars.
It sounds like Empire at War, but that game came out way later than when you were a kid, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I probably wasn't a kid. I was probably like 18 or 19. So, I mean, that's still a kid to me, but yeah, around then. So you got to remember I'm old. So that was maybe it is that. I'll have to look. But yeah, I just remember you could be the Empire and build the Death Star and destroy the rebellion with the Death Star. It was awesome.
Look it up for the next Star Wars episode, Johnny, because I have nothing to relate to you with a game you can't even name.
It was like a PC game that I didn't own the game. I was just playing it at a friend's house. He let me sit down and muddle through it, and I was bad. But I did get to blow up stuff with a Death Star, and I remember enjoying that. I just wasn't I wasn't a computer gaming guy. Still, I'm
just going to say it was definitely Star Wars Empire at War, Johnny, even though I know nothing about that game, but it's an RTS. It came out in 2006.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
we did it.
Let's see, 2006?
2006.
Oh.
Well, you said Warcraft 2, which is that makes it sound older.
Yeah.
I'm just going to cut all this. So let's get to the bottom of this, Johnny.
Okay. So, you want to research this now or what? Just go into the episode.
Let's go into the goddamn episode. I'm tired. I've been up since
let's
early.
go.
All right.
What? Don't.
What's the episode, Johnny?
You tell me what the episode. It's your episode.
All right, we are going to. What do we do? So, inspired by my thoughts on, I wonder what the most common, most expensive game is, kind of objectively. We looked at for this just NES through Game Boy Advance. And we're looking at the top-selling Nintendo games and which ones among them are the most expensive. And it turns out a lot of them. So kind of flipping this episode on its head, I think the most interesting things to talk about will be which Nintendo games are kind of getting snubbed compared to the Mario, Zelda, Metroids of the world.
Okay. And
then I guess also more broadly, I've had pretty much all of these games for 20 years, Johnny. I've not looked at these prices. I've not kept up in prices a lot, especially in the past couple of years. And it's kind of a price refresher for me to go through absolutely everything for all the best-selling Nintendo games, especially Nintendo 64. I've looked at the game value now, or the overall price charts, and it's just a line that's going straight up for the past couple years. But yeah, N64 prices are out of control. I don't know how anyone out there is doing it. Godspeed to everyone.
Is it really gotten that crazy? What you just let's just go into the everything episode. I'll learn with you.
It's $100 for anything Nintendo, which is it's N64. It's a garbage system for garbage people, Johnny. You know this.
I do know this.
Also,
probably my most popular quote.
All right, we'll talk about it when we get to N64. But let's just go over some of the most popular NES games. I don't think there's any real surprises here, Johnny. Do you want to run through? No,
surprise me.
There's so the best-selling NES games, and I'm cutting a few out here because there's a bunch of boring stuff in NES, like Kung Fu is a best-selling NES game, and Volleyball is sold over 1.5 million copies, I think.
Also, these are worldwide sales.
These are worldwide prices. So that Volleyball is probably including Famicom Disk System prices or something. Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, 3, tens of millions of copies, yet they still sell for $75 to $200. That's a very recent thing. Everybody knows what's going on there. There's nothing interesting I can say about that.
No, so we know Super Mario is overpriced and very common, and
not overpriced. Incredibly important. The only one that is overpriced is Super Mario 2 because no one actually likes it. Send your hate mail to Johnny_Iuchi.
Yeah, send me your ats that why you hate Mario 2. And don't be like, because it's Doki Doki Panic. Who cares?
The Legend of Zelda sold 6.5 million. It's $150 plus. All depends on variant and condition for that game. But again, nothing super surprising there. A lot of these games that have spiked up, hovered around MSRP. I wanted to focus on games that were more than MSRP. So like The Legend of Zelda was a $60 game for a long time. But in the past couple of years, that has obviously spiked way up. Same thing with Zelda 2, 4.3 million, $88. Metroid, $3 million, $100.
Hold on, I just want to interject on MSRP. So MSRP was a little... Not every store followed MSRP. Like, a lot of stores charged more than MSRP. Obviously, sales happened and went less. But I remember Zelda 2, when it first came out, being like $90 and $95 some places. Just, I know, like, some people got it for like $50 and $60 like you could for most. But around Christmas seasons, even some of the big box stores had that thing jacked way up. Because I remember I really wanted it. And one of the reasons I was cited as not getting it is because it was, we walked in, it was very expensive.
You're right. And
that's just like that happened like more during NES time than it did like going forward. So, but still, MSRP was still supposed to be like $50, $60 on that thing.
Yeah.
I just want to let people know if any of them old timers are like, I paid $85 for that. I'm with you, but that's MSRP was still lower than people could sell for more than MSRP back then and sometimes did.
Yeah. And
supply and demand.
I basically just used $60 as a baseline for what was going. Like after inflation, like all this stuff is worth less than MSRP still.
Right.
Metroid, $100, probably more for a really nice one. Sold 3 million copies. All right, no one's surprised that Mario, Zelda, and Metroid are expensive-ish games.
I am.
I mean, no, you're not. I'm not since 2012, since 2019. No, you're not. Since 2012, 2019, 2020, late 2020. Who knows? So many crazy spikes in games lately. I just said all the black box games. Mario Brothers was one that sold particularly well, but I just didn't look all them up because they're all kind of expensive.
Yeah, you didn't look up Donkey Kong Jr. Math? That one sold like hotcakes.
That one
did not sell like hotcakes.
I bet I could look up Pinball. Pinball's probably less than $60. So sad. One of my favorite black box. Punch Out and Mike Tyson's Punch Out, their numbers are combined into one. 3 million, it's $183, but it's combining so many things together. But yes, that is an expensive common game. No one is surprised about that. Kid Icarus, 1.75 million, $100 game. It's an old NES game, so it's probably a lot of those sales are coming from Japan, because Kid Icarus isn't like dirt common. And it also has kind of like it's got black box rubbing off on it because it's a silver box game. I know there are fans of Kid Icarus. It's also got the hang tab appeal. I will take what was that?
I said it's also got the hang tab appeal.
It's got hang tab, yeah.
But
I mean, the hang tab is not super common, so
no. But like, if you want that, like that's what I'm saying. Like that price, $100. That's not talking about the hang tab one.
It's not, but it's an average. The hang tab price is average in there. I'm trying to justify why Kid Icarus should be lower in price, and I just want to constantly bring up, and I will argue it till I die. Not a lot of people are Kid Icarus fans, and I know there are like weird diehard people who are Kid Icarus fans.
I loved Kid Icarus.
There is Kid Icarus, and then there is Kid Icarus Rising on the 3DS, and then there's the Myths and Demons on Game Boy, which I've never heard anyone play. People just put it on their shelf because it's a Kid Icarus game. The most popular Kid Icarus game is Super Smash Bros. I think Kid Icarus is fine. It's just when people go off about it like it's this huge, impactful classic. It's just like...
You didn't love Kid Icarus?
I just like shitting on Kid Icarus. Why? I remember when I was a kid, really I used a Game Genie, I think, that gave me infinite lives or something. And
Kid Icarus is hard.
I was using Game Genie, like it was like invincibility or infinite life, something like super ridiculously overpowered, and I still had trouble with the last level, is what I remember about Kid Icarus.
Man, flying up through that like space level, and you're decked out with like your mirror shield and everything, and you got your little helmet on. What a pain in the ass that game was. And the eggplant wizards, so frustrating.
Yeah. I'm not going to say Kid Icarus is overpriced because it has basically everything going for it, but it is relatively common numerically. And that doesn't mean the box, of course.
I'm going to say it's underpriced.
Underpriced. Go for it. Kid Icarus, $3 $300 game. I mean, I bet you can't get a super nice Kid Icarus for $100. Remember, these are all like price charting prices, so this is like totally average condition.
Yeah, there's a really like it's shabby but not unpresentable like hang tab version for like $179 a best offer right now on eBay. And if I still needed a hang tab copy, I would have been all over that.
All right, time to pause the show. Is that a good price? Are you serious? Let's pause the show.
I like Kid Icarus, so I would have just been looking for it, but I've since picked mine up.
I've got a really nice non-hang tab, no Rev A version that I got from Eric. Excitebike Comics and Games. And I think I paid more than $175.
Yeah, you can pick up Kid Icarus for like $100, I think, still pretty easily, and even less. But yeah, I think the hang tab. Oh no, see, there's one for $79.
This is not nice, Johnny.
I didn't say it was nice. I said it was shabby.
Oh, you said it was shabby. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I said a shabby copy, and then there's actually another a shabbier copy that would still present okay for like $80. So I mean, depending on how desperate I was just to say I had the hang tab. There's ways to get it. Yeah, Kid Icarus, I'm looking at it. You can still find copies for like well under $100. You can pick up a hang tab version now for $100. I'm going to go with my gut feeling there. Underpriced. People, even though they sold a lot of copies of this game, Kid Icarus has everything going for it.
Except that they sold a lot of copies of it.
Yeah, that's the only...
But no, I mean, really, it does like the style, except the fact that it's a franchise that has gone nowhere and no one actually cares about it.
It is so annoying. Like, I had so much hope when they brought him into Smash. I'm like, oh man, finally they're like going to do something. They made the 3DS game. Like, please revisit Kid Icarus. Like, it would have been like the perfect kind of game to keep in like that 2.5D, like on the 3DS and like move it that way. They didn't do anything. I'm so surprised.
I would totally play another Kid Icarus game that was like Kid Icarus. Not the Game Boy game, because I feel it's like illegal to play the Game Boy game. No one ever talks about the Game Boy game.
I think they should, whatever they do, they should make it for the Switch, 2.5D, and then include, it should be part of a Kid Icarus collection. They should just tack on the other two so you can play them. No,
Nintendo can't give that much away. They'd have to charge extra for that somehow.
Maybe make it a pre-order bundle.
All right, Johnny. I'm going to say Kid Icarus price, not very surprising. DuckTales sold $1.7 million copies, $71 game. Not surprising, really, because that is a absolutely beloved game. That's the first third-party game on our list.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive that it's got those kinds of numbers and it was third-party.
Yeah. And then also Ghosts and Goblins, another Capcom game, sold 1.6 million, and that's 78.
I'm surprised. That one surprises me. I love Ghosts and Goblins as well, but Ghosts and Goblins, one, I liked it better on Super Nintendo. It was Super Ghouls and Ghosts, right? But this is not a game that I thought people loved on the NES. Like, it was a hard kind of, at some points, miserable game.
I think it's just one of those games that's so entwined with what the NES is. Like, when you think NES, you think like Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Ninja Gaiden, Kid Icarus, DuckTales. I think it's just one of those games. I mean, also because it was so popular, it sold 1 billion copies.
What about Dragon Warrior? How many did it sell?
They couldn't sell. They just had to give them all away, Johnny.
That's the joke, Tyler. that's the joke. All right. Hey, congrats. You found the joke. Good. All right. So tell me the interesting stuff then. What this is all like, okay. What's the weird stuff?
So it's not really weird, but Tetris, 5.5 million copies, which is 1 billion copies, and complete in box, one of the easiest games you'll ever try to find. $19. And in this post-supply world where demand is everything and it doesn't matter how many copies there are, Tetris might be the best-selling franchise ever? I don't know. Like, maybe like Minecraft has surpassed it at this point.
Sims.
It's not The Sims. All right, let's fight. We're going to the Wikipedia best-selling franchises while in the middle of a sentence. Because when you look up like the list of best-selling games, Tetris is always on top because they combine all the Tetris games into one game. All right, I'm f***ing wrong. Okay, it's Mario. Tetris is number 2. Tetris sells more than Pokemon. Because it's counting 425 million mobile phone downloads. That, god damn it. But the Pokemon number includes Pokemon Go then. Johnny, let me get back to my point. Tetris is incredibly popular. NES,
Yes.
Not the definitive version, maybe the definitive version? It's the version they compete
Which version?
on, right?
Which version? Tengen or?
No, regular ass
Nintendo.
Tetris. $19 ass complete in box Tetris.
I know. I'm just
Why are you
showing that there's-
difficult? Stop being difficult.
Because that's collecting in a nutshell. It's difficult. There's so many caveats. There's so many corner cases and bullshit that people, and I know everyone listening to this show knows that, but there's a lot to take in. It's not just numbers. That's why when you look at a best-selling list, and that's a perfect illustration, like, why is Tetris have so many? How many phone downloads did they bring in there? That's stupid. Why did they do that? But that's collecting, and that's why looking, like, contextualizing data is important, or else, because if you just read the numbers, you would get it wrong.
Basically, I'm saying pick up a copy of Tetris. Because
Agree.
I think Tetris is actually the cheapest game out of any game we've looked at. Out of any of the best-selling Nintendo games, Tetris is the cheapest of any of them, which is kind of crazy. Because like when you buy a Nintendo, you're like, well, I need a copy of Tetris.
I'm going to say at least 3 of the next, or out of, including Tetris, 3 of the next, the 4 total games you're going to talk about next. I think if you don't have these complete in box, you should endeavor to do so while they are cheap.
Sure. Next one, Kirby's Adventure is $51 and sold 1.75 million copies. So again, sold 1 billion copies, even though it's a late release NES game. It is not Kirby's first game, but goddamn is it the first game that feels like a Kirby game. Because in Kirby's Dream Land, you cannot suck up people and take their power. So Kirby's Dream Land sucks balls. And Kirby's Adventure is a much better game.
Also, Kirby's Adventure has amazing box art. Like, it's really good. It's got him eating the box art.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
It's people don't love Kirby even as much as they love Kid Icarus. And he's clearly on a different tier than Mario, Zelda, Metroid, $70,000 Donkey Kong.
Yeah, so beware with the Kirby versions. There is like a French-Canadian version you can get that's got like an ugly banner at the bottom. So try not to get that one.
I think that's more a problem with sealed copies because there's a ton of new old stock of those Canadian ones. You used to be able to get them for there were like cases of those selling for like $200. And now I'm sure a single one sells for more than $200. But
so
I've never even seen one of those complete in box.
Yeah, get well, they're available, and like I don't see actually many on eBay that are under like $80 that are like reasonable. So just beware. But if you don't have a Kirby, it's just an important game to have. Like Kirby games, if you look at like GBA and stuff, people love Kirby. Like don't slouch. If you're a collector and you find a reasonable price on this Kirby game, pick it up.
Yeah, I just the market is snubbing Kirby. We don't like Kirby. Donkey Kong Classic sold 1.6 million, and it's $40.
Can't even believe you're talking about this game.
Wow.
How much do you hate Donkey Kong Classic?
I mean, I hate any version of Donkey Kong that doesn't have the Pie Factory level.
Yeah.
Why can't you believe I'm talking about this?
Just like you got so annoyed last time I brought up Donkey Kong Classics.
What are you talking about?
It was like 2 years ago. I forget what I was bringing it up about, but you were like annoyed. And this version actually has some extra good stuff on there too. There's like the Game Boy version I think is on here, right?
Dude, I don't know anything about Donkey Kong Classics. I just assumed it was a compilation of Donkey Kong Jr. I've never even put it in my NES.
No, I think it actually has better versions of Donkey Kong on it.
All right, let's go to look it up.
Well, we don't have to look it up.
Nothing has changed in gameplay modes. The only difference is the title screen. It's now a blue color.
Is it?
Cool.
Maybe it's the Game Boy one that has the better stuff in it.
Oh, Donkey Kong on Game Boy is just it's basically the first Mario vs. Donkey Kong game. It's got like 100 levels. That game's awesome.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's why someone came and told me about it, and I'm just misremembering all over the place. All right, cool, yeah. Good on me, Johnny.
I mean, I assume Donkey Kong Classics is just kept down because if the collectors want Donkey Kong Jr. because they're both black box games and way more interesting.
Yep. And Donkey Kong Classics is not part of the Classic series.
Oh my god,
either, which
Johnny,
is also weird.
it.
Well, I'm just saying because the like OG player's choice on Nintendo was the Classics, which you can get like 3 games in, like Punch Out and Blades of Steel, weirdly, and the Zeldas.
And the funny part is, like, it would totally fit in there. Even like the time frame, like Donkey Kong Classics, I think came out when Punch Out came. Oh, but not Punch Out Classic series. Oh man. Yeah, anyway, the last one is Yoshi, which sold 1.75 million. It's a $23 game. I just put it on here because it says Yoshi. No one cares about Yoshi. If you could actually play as Yoshi and it wasn't some stupid puzzle game, it would be way more expensive, but it's not. And I think that's probably the same thing for Tetris. It's $19 because no matter how classic, how timeless, how anyone in the world wants to play and understands Tetris, it's a puzzle game and people aren't going to spend a lot of money for puzzle games. Again,
though, great box art. Yeah. It's got Yoshi coming out of the egg. It's got Boo and piranha plants.
I don't like Yoshi's box. I don't like anything about Yoshi.
Really?
Maybe it's just that I look at it and I get disappointed. I'm like, I can't play as Yoshi in that game. It's a stupid puzzle game.
My wife loves Yoshi, so I like the box art.
Johnny, did nothing in NES is super surprising to me, besides maybe Tetris and Kirby, and even Kirby is like, eh.
Yeah, there's no big shocks there. I mean, the problem with NES is it's always, the depths are always plumb. So let's, yes. I mean, we took a long time talking about that. So and that was my fault. I'm constantly derailing us, but let's go into Super Nintendo. So, tell me, that wasn't even a word. I said, tell me. Cool. Learn to speak, Johnny, slow down. Hey, Tyler, please tell me about the Super Nintendo.
All right, so we looked at all the Super Nintendo games that sold more than 2 million copies worldwide again. And keep in mind that once we're in Super Nintendo land, if a game has a player's choice version, that's going to suppress the price a little bit. So Super Mario World doesn't count because all those sales are going to be pack-ins. So our first game, Mario All-Stars, with 10.5 million copies sold, is sitting at $68. Pure demand thing, not surprising at all, despite how many copies it sold. And that price is even suppressed. So it's like barely above quote-unquote MSRP, but also those player's choice copies are bringing it down.
Right. And there was a pack-in version of that as well.
Yep. Next one on the list of above MSRP, 5.1 million copies sold, Donkey Kong Country 2 for $73. This one surprised me, Johnny, for 2 reasons. One, we skipped over Donkey Kong Country, which is not that surprising because Donkey Kong Country, 1 billion copies out there. It's always been a pretty cheap game. I didn't know Donkey Kong Country 2 was a $73 game.
No.
Do you have a price chart? Is it, in your head, is this a $73 game?
No. All the Donkey Kong games, because they were pretty common, weren't that expensive, except for maybe it's the Player's Choice 2 version, and all of them have a Player's Choice. So careful on that. One of the Player's Choice, I think it's either 2 or 3, has a hard to find Player's Choice copy.
So this was $40 forever, and then it shot up in basically coronavirus, March 2020. And I guess it just shot up because like Donkey Kong Country 2, that's the Donkey Kong Country that I would say most people want to play. So it's not that surprising that it shot up, being one of the most playable games on the Super Nintendo. But
well, and also it's in the, like, it just got released. I think, was it one of them just got released on the Switch Super Nintendo app, and it's in the SNES Classic. So all of that is happening and still this much, which is kind of crazy. Also, I really don't like the Donkey Kong Country games.
I think they're okay. You always talk about how you hate them, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't like playing as primates. Just don't like it.
I don't get it, John.
I don't know what, like, I think I told the story where there was like a monkey that chased us as a kid. Anyways, since then, I'm just like blanket, not into it. Don't want it. Also, if you've ever been to a zoo and went by like a gorilla enclosure or anything, I know these are not all the same thing, right? I'm just lumping primates and like so gross smelling and just not into it. Also, just like every time I happen by one in a zoo, just like, okay, that one's doing something unseemly right in front of me. Cool. like either shitting like right at you or masturbating. I just have zero good experiences. So there's a lot to it.
Wow.
Go on. Not into it.
Well, going from that, Link to the Past, 4.6 million copies, $135. It could literally be selling for any price, and I'll be like, yeah, it's a Link to the Past. People are going to pay whatever they have to if that's the game they want, no matter how common it is.
All the crazy prices, like, I just feel like that's not enough. I don't want to say it's underpriced, but you're just like, man, that's like pretty reasonable for, arguably the best Zelda game. Like, people fight over this in Ocarina, right? And now Breath of the Wild. But it's an undeniably great Zelda game. And you're just like, 135 seems really reasonable, especially considering all the things that are packed into it.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably not going to get like a mint complete one for 135. It's probably going to be a little bit more. But yeah, no, I agree. Like when you compare it to other garbage things people are buying, like you could, for the same price or a little bit more, get limited run games Chex Quest. And if you don't have a nice complete copy of Link to the Past, what are you doing buying stupid ass limited run game stuff?
Yeah, I don't care if they're like, oh, this is more rare. Dude, if Heritage Auctions has taught us anything, games that are popular and also in demand, command money. And we're like in this weird crossroad right now as collectors. So it's interesting. Anyways, go on. Yeah,
so I didn't mention it at the beginning, but as I was making the list of prices, just like the top 20 best-selling Super Nintendo games are just like such goddamn stone cold classics. Like every single game, like there's any of these games could be like $100, $200 games. It'd be like, well, yeah, it's like one of the best games ever made. Whereas you're going down the NES list, and there's all those like weird ones. Like
Kung Fu.
Like Kung Fu, like if that's a $200 game, it's like why like Kung Fu's fine, okay. Like Ninja Kid, it's like okay, Ninja Kid's kind of uncommon. You can't really find it in nice shape, but like who cares about Ninja Kid? Anyway, Yoshi's Island, 4.1 million, $120. Nothing to say there. Amazing platformer. Okay, Donkey Kong Country 3 sold $3.5 million. And it's $103 or 3.5 million copies, and it is $103 game right now. It is not Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver crazy. Who the cares about Donkey Kong Country 3? I understand Donkey Kong Country 2 is right now a $73 game. I understand that Donkey Kong Country 3 is technically, numerically rarer than Donkey Kong Country 2. And there are like the weird people who like it more than Donkey Kong Country 2 who are wrong. But Donkey Kong Country 2 is a much more beloved game that I don't care if it sold twice as many copies. It has way more than twice as many people who hold it dear to them. I just can't believe that this game... I can't even believe it's selling for more than Donkey Kong Country 2, to be perfectly honest.
No thoughts.
You have nothing to say because it's a monkey game.
Yeah.
All right. Final Fantasy 3, no one needs to hear about that, right? So we can just move straight past
Final
that.
Fantasy 3 is a Final Fantasy game, which is amazing.
So Final Fantasy 3, 3.4 million copies, but that includes Japan copies, and for RPGs, it's going to be way skewed.
Yeah.
$217. This might be maybe a most common, most expensive game contender.
Maybe. Possibly, but also RPGs have always commanded a premium. Like even back in the early days of collecting, RPGs were always more. They were more, people keep them. And if you, even, especially for players, right? So if you are, back in the day, if you weren't like a collector, but you wanted just your old games so you could play them, which meant you were collecting them. We don't need to get into the semantics of how stupid that is. But the money per hour, like your dollar per hour of gameplay, made that game seem worth it. So if you had to pay $50 or $60 for it back in 2004, you're like, well, I'm going to play the shit out of this game. I'm going to put a lot of hours into this. It's not like Mario World where you're going to maybe put 20, 10, 15. Like you can run through it relatively quickly, right? Donkey Kong Country. You can go through these games fast. Zelda still doesn't take that long. Final Fantasy, you could, like really grind it into, 50 to 100 hours if you really wanted to be crazy. So you're thinking, oh yeah, I guess that feels okay, knowing how much I'm going to play this, spending, more money. That's kind of where RPGs have always had this like price inflation. Plus, if you're getting a box complete, usually they had a thicker manual and a couple of maps like Final Fantasy does. So you just it felt like you got more than other games.
Yeah. I mean, it feels more premium, and as a collector, that's really nice. I don't like buying a big box PC game that comes in a big box and the box is empty except for like a jewel case. It's like, wow, I sure feel dumb that I paid $60 for this. So yeah, Final Fantasy 3, very expensive, but I think we could say it's justified, but still, it's expensive because of crazy demand for it.
Yep.
Mario Paint is on here, $2.3 million. It barely squeaks out $67. I don't know what Mario Paint's MSRP was. I bet it was a more expensive game, right?
It was, yeah, because it came with the mouse and the mouse pad. Also, as a player's choice version, Mario Paint was such a weird game, but everybody had it. My aunt, I was living with my aunt at the time, and she bought one for my cousin Will, so we had it at our house somehow.
Yeah, not a contender for a cool, very common but expensive game. Shout out to Mario Paint though, for it was basically a $30 game complete in box in 2012, and it has kind of steadily grown since then. It has not been $30 for 7 years, and then in the past 2 years doubled in price, like most of the games on our list.
So here's going to be something just to know about Mario Paint. If you want this game, and you think you're going to get it and you want it complete in box specifically, get it sooner rather than later. If you can pick it up at a local convention whenever those happen again, you should do that, because shipping isn't getting less expensive, and that game is not of a convenient size to ship. So, it's just one of those things where, this game used to sell for $30 and ship for $8. Now it's like selling for $60 to $70 and shipping for like $18 sometimes. So just careful. Like, it's just one of those things to keep in the back of your mind on any of the dumb NES big box games, or I should say Super NES.
And there's only 2.3 million copies out there.
Right. Which includes player choice copies.
Worldwide, and obviously many have been lost to time. I guess what Mario Paint has going for it, which is why it's not super expensive, is that keeping the box is really convenient to store the mouse pad and the mouse. So it is probably a lot easier to find a complete in box Mario Paint than basically probably any other SNES game. I don't know if that's true, but like relative from loose carts to complete, no, I don't. That's not even true, because Mario Paint is such a dirt common loose cart. So I can't even say.
But what it does have going for it over other collectible games is that it's like you can emulate it, but unless you have like the right tools, like if you're like running it on a ROM cart that you're sticking into your analog or whatever, unless you have the mouse and everything, this is not something you're gonna. So it's got extra pieces. It's not ever going to be on the Super Nintendo Classic. They're not going to put it on Switch Online most likely. So it's it's one of those ones that isn't going to see a bunch of different ways to play it, but also like, would you want to? So that's my negative on it.
It's got a cool music maker, Johnny.
Did I ever tell this story on the show of the ski trip? So when I was in high school, this is in northern Nevada, my cousin and I, we ditched school, and we told my aunt, because it was like a, not winter break, but it was like ski break. We had a ski week where the schools just closed for 3 days, and we told my aunt it was the whole week. So we were like relying on her work schedule, because she left like before people went to school and got home after, right? So we were relying on that gap that she would never find out, and we would be home to take the call from administration, which then they were going to be pretty lax because lots of kids just take the whole week anyways. So we got caught on the last day because one of her coworkers mentioned it, not that she drove by her. They're like, literally getting caught in the last hour, like right before she came home, was very frustrating. And she was canceling our ski trip, right, for the weekend. And we wrote an apology on Super Mario Maker and used the music thing. That's a real story. Like, we like had a thing. It said like, "We're sorry, love you, Aunt Betsy," and like had like flowers, and like we made dinner. Yeah. We were like 13. This is the thing we did.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
yeah, my cousin Will, who's more artistic than I am, like got on there and cranked some stuff out, like, you know, and I'm over his shoulder, like giving ideas and like making the music and stuff. It was real dumb. Where like tidying up the house. I don't know whose stupid idea this was, but yeah, it worked out. And then later in life, she told us, she's like, yeah, we were always going to let you guys go because we'd already paid and like we weren't ever getting that money back.
Yeah,
but we wanted to scare you.
Kids.
But yeah, but we wanted to like put it in you that wasn't cool. So, but she did enjoy the gesture. So there you go. That's a dumb thing I did.
Guys, we need to apologize. How about we play video games?
Yeah. Yeah. We had it running like when she came home. I think we made dinner and like had the lights low and everything. It was real dumb. So
Johnny.
Anyways.
Next on our list of best-selling Super Nintendo games, 2.1 million copies, Super Mario RPG, $200. Basically the same as Final Fantasy 3 in every aspect, including that it is super common in Japan and a lot of the sales are probably.
But I mean, what it has really going for it, it's the start of the Super Mario RPG series.
Sure. Woo.
Like if you're looking for first, right? Like that's important. You said, well, not many things started on the Super Nintendo. This is one that did. Same with Donkey Kong Country. These are games that started here. So They should be commanding more for that reason. And I don't think people have really like the high end have like really tuned into that yet. Like they've tuned into it's Mario, but they haven't tuned into like
Johnny.
This is
you could probably go on Heritage and find like a $40,000 Super Mario RPG sale.
I know. Look,
they don't care about complete in box. You're talking about a different market. The people buying regular ass games like you and me aren't like, what's the first appearance of Mario RPG? They're just like, Mario RPG is f***ing awesome. I need to put that on my shelf.
Yeah, but I'm telling all of our collectors who listen and do collect more like us that stuff will trickle down and become expensive for CIBs. And you're starting to see CIBs move at a more rapid pace on Heritage, and within those circles, like in the high end rooms, you're starting to see more chatter about CIBs and people showing them off more. Before it was like all sealed all the time. And now like, you're like, oh, okay, people are just showing CIBs now. Nice CIBs, but still CIBs.
All right, FOMO everything, because then you're just going to turn into me and just spend every last dollar on video games you don't have that you're worried about.
No, it's like the point you made. Like if you're out there buying stupid shit on limited run or super rare games or any of these other fucking idiot boutique companies, which make some fine games, and I am also buying some from. But if you're out there buying this other ridiculous shit and you're like, maybe I should get Super Mario RPG, I can't really afford it. Don't buy 3 limited run games and go buy Super Mario RPG instead. That is the better buy.
But Johnny, you told me to buy Mario Paint, and I had to spend $75 at a convention to get that. And then you told me to buy Link to the Past at literally any price, and I spent $500 on a really nice one I found on Facebook.
No, you did not do that.
Johnny, I'm out of money, and now I can't buy Super Mario RPG. Should I take out a payday loan?
Have you considered? Yeah. Should we get into how bad payday loans are for you? No, don't. Don't ever.
I heard it's a good idea to buy games that I think will go up in price and put them on a credit card, Johnny. Is that true?
No, stop that. See, Tyler's making jokes, but this is literal things we read and hear about, or people tell us, or have asked me questions about specifically. Should I buy X? I can't really afford it. Here's the end of that statement. I can't really afford it. The end.
You want to see a lot of sweaty people doing that? Look at the MTG finance community where people make some really bad decisions.
Oh, God. Just don't I know it. And I don't want to invest. I just want to, like, you should, I always advocate that you just buy things you love and are awesome. Yeah, of course you can speculate, buy, and, be out there and keep your eyes open and make a good purchase when you see it. But investing, like buying up like 10, 12 copies because you think you're going to make that money, it gets so sketchy. It can go so south on you. And I'm not an investor, so I'm not going to tell you yay or nay are the best way to do any of that. But just be careful out there. Buy good stuff, though. Like, if you're going to spend money, like, don't, and you're like, well, I can't afford this now, but I'm going to buy 3 limited run games over the next week. Just think about whether you would rather own Mario RPG are those shitty limited run games. Especially if they come in the collector's edition. God, unless you really love it, don't buy the collector's editions. Such bad value.
Oh, anyways. Just limited run in general? Whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows the value of limited run in 10 years?
In 10 years, it might be fine, but but that's just the weird state of collecting now. Everything in me says that shouldn't be right. But who knows? Like, if you look at raw numbers, they are never going to be as high as like the millions we're talking about right now.
Well, so wait, what are you talking about?
Limited run games. That's what. Like, we're talking about millions.
But like, one thing that we probably bring it up on the show, but I'm going to bring it up again. I said in 10 years, just as like a random thing I'm throwing out there, no one has any idea what the market's going to be like in 10 years. Because guess what? 3 years ago, people, what did we think was the coolest thing to own? I don't know. What was like the hot thing? Like Earthbound and Little Samson?
Yeah. And the bubble was coming and bursting.
I recognize that like the regular collectors out there still think a lot of the same games are cool and their opinions haven't changed because some weirdos came into the high-end market. But now there's this different like public level. Like there's always been the weird seedy underground, but like headline sales of tens of thousands of dollars regularly for games that had no value, not no value, 1/100th of the value. Now people are like, oh, print runs are all that matters now. Specifically, like just this print run though, not going that specific into this minor detail or this chip or this board set. All these weird little variants that no one really cares or documents. Because those will no one will ever care about those things.
Yeah, date codes don't matter as long as this is the first print.
In 10 years, date codes might be the only thing that matters. Or in 10 years, no one might give a shit about any of this. And people have entirely moved on, and like the market is 1,000,000% PlayStation 2. Like there's no blue chips in video games. So I just want to point out that fucking games that are selling for $50,000 that were worth $700 2 years ago, that's weird. If a market swings that much, it could be Bitcoin. Look at Bitcoin in 2017. Also, look at Bitcoin right now.
And look at Bitcoin in 18 after it crashed. Remember it got up to like 18K per coin or something and then crashed back down, or maybe it crashed 18 and then
got up to 19, Johnny, and I got out at 14 and I felt great about it.
And you're like, oh yeah, and it like fell all the way down to like 6 and people were like, get rid of all your Bitcoin. Yeah. And now look at it. Who f***ing knows? Again, we're not investors. Don't listen. This is not an investment podcast.
I put it so. I mean, Bitcoin is like 3 times at what I sold my Bitcoin at, but I put all that into video games, and video games have gone crazy too. So who cares? Yeah. Also, speaking of things going crazy, I'm like, video games are obviously up since coronavirus. They're up, and like it's been a little bit weird since then. But like I keep a little bit on top of other collectibles like comics and sports cards and things like that. I've started looking more into sports cards. That just seems like fucking nuts compared to sports video games. So like the more I expose myself to comics, sports cards, as much coins as I can get. There's not a lot of coin YouTubers, and YouTube is where I get most of my information.
It's because most of those guys are struggling to be alive at 100 years old.
Exactly. Like video games are
really reasonable.
I don't, what am I trying to say? Like, I can't complain about the state of like our prices increasing when like this sports card went up, or this comic book went from like $8,000 to $21,000. It's like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of collectibles, we're still pretty small potatoes.
Yeah. Like if you need Hulk 181, I'm just throwing a random book out there, and it goes from like the copy you want goes from $7,000 to $21,000. It's like you can't get that anymore. But if like Super Mario World sells for $50,000 on Heritage Auctions, it's like, well, all right, I'll go get a complete in box copy for $400. Thank you.
Yeah. So this takes us back to when Dennis was on the show last, probably 2 years ago now? that Dennis was on.
Yes.
And he talked about this just a little bit, that, video games, they don't know, like, video game collectors don't know what the insane markets of these other collectibles look like. And it's, paltry numbers compared to what happens to this. And like, since coronavirus, that has been highlighted extremely. You look at it and you're just like, wow, this is insane. People are crazy in the sports card world, but even like Magic and even new properties that have come in, like, have you seen any of this stuff on like Flesh and Blood? Like, a new game comes in, instantly becomes like a crazy collectible now, and the boxes go from $80 to like $500 overnight. You're just like, what the hell happened? What is going on in the world? So collectibles are crazy. And, if you are into just collecting CIB black box or CIB video games, and you can look around and you be like, this is not so bad. This is
really
not as good as it's not as good as it was, but it could be a lot worse. Just know that you have dodged some bullets you don't know that you've dodged. So go look out into those worlds and see how ugly it is out there, because video game land is still and if you collect cart, it's even more reasonable. It's like, if you're happy with just owning carts, your world is good. You're fine. You just carry on.
What happens when I get all the carts, though, Johnny?
You stop.
I don't know about that.
No, you stop.
I could keep buying carts. I could buy like Game Boy Color carts. That would be fun, right? Very fun.
No, even Game Boy Color is going up. There's some dumb. I don't want to get it. I fucking hate Game Boy Color. You hate Game Boy Color more than me.
Game Boy Color. Terrible garbage system. Probably Nintendo's worst system.
It's a tweener system. It's like Game Boy was awesome. Game Boy Color is fine, and then Game Boy Advance is awesome.
Yes. Johnny, I want to backtrack and then tangent to our tangent and say, we talked about having Dennis on the show 2 years ago. Today, I was trying to look up the Video Game Collectors podcast, whatever Dennis's podcast was that he did 2 episodes of on YouTube. And it's called something super generic, like Video Game Collecting Podcast, something like that. And now there's another show that's also called that. It's called something like Video Game Collecting Podcast. And I'm sorry, we probably have crossover audience because there's only so many podcasts about collecting video games. They have this generic name, like Video Game Collecting Podcast. So I look for that. All that comes up is Collector's Quest. And I understand my Google results are tailored to me. Fine. And I start looking for like Dennis Con Video Game Collecting Podcast, Dennis Con Podcast. And all that comes up is Collector's Quest. So my shout out to Dennis, who doesn't listen to the show, or if someone has Dennis's ear, which I kind of do, I could just tell him myself and make fun of him.
I'm like, you could text him.
Yeah. He has the worst name. You know what? Josh Barley listens to the show. Rename your stupid ass podcast to something I could find on Google, because I was trying to find it for some reason today.
It was only like, why didn't you search YouTube? That's where it was.
Because I'm Johnny. I'm a brainless person who just types into Google and expects everything to be there and never clicks to like the third page, because if it's on the third page, I don't even know. I think the saying is if it's on the second page, it doesn't exist, but I go to the second page and then give up. Anyway, we are so far off topic of trying to find the most common, most expensive game, Johnny.
Okay.
Out of 3 to 6 Nintendo consoles.
I mean, we all, like, spoiler alert, it's definitely going to be a Pokemon game, right?
Oh, are you segueing back on track?
Yes.
Oh, definitely going to be a Pokemon game. Although, maybe in terms of raw numbers, because they have such higher numbers. But what's our next game, Johnny?
Chrono Trigger. That was a Super Nintendo game that no one cares about, that only sold 2 million copies, and it's only like $500 now. It's no big deal.
That game's super common. You shouldn't pay anything for that, Johnny.
Nope. RPG syndrome.
No, it's super common. I can't believe idiots out there think they can pay $500 for a Chrono Trigger.
How much did that CIB Super Mario Brothers sell for?
Yeah. I'm joking, but I didn't even look up Chrono Trigger. There was the one game I was just like, it's probably like $400. And I'm like, maybe that's high. I should look it up. And I looked it up and it's $500. I'm like, oh my God.
When you said it was $500, I was like, really? $500? When did that happen? In my mind, Chrono Trigger is always $150 game, but my mind is
That's
picked
like
that
a
game
cart
up
now, probably.
so long ago.
Strong contender for most common, most expensive game, just because Complete in Box is so expensive now. However, a lot of those sales are Japanese, although there's still a significant amount of Chrono Trigger sales in America. To put it in a dumb and arbitrary scale, I believe on Nintendo Age, Chrono Trigger is a 3 out of 10 rarity.
Nintendo Age Rarity Guides.
Nice and dumb and
also, there's a DS copy, right? So that's like one of the things, and you can play it on Android and Apple devices.
And people still need their Complete in Box Chrono Trigger because it's right. Fancy and comes with maps and comes with a unique registration card that is hard to find on its own, and you'll have to buy a whole nother copy of Chrono Trigger just to get this goddamn registration card, Johnny.
Except you had already bought a registration card and didn't have to do that.
No, I already bought another copy that had the registration card just for the registration card, and I forgot I bought that second copy of Chrono Trigger, and then I was looking for a third copy of Chrono Trigger until I realized I already had it.
And I mean, I'm tired of like saying that I got you such a sweet price on Chrono Trigger, but I did.
Johnny, anything that anyone bought ever is a sweet price now.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Yes,
but that was only back at the last Portland Retro Gaming Expo.
Yeah.
Which is so many lifetimes ago now.
I cannot wait. So I guess Portland's happening this year. Is it August? Like that seems
I don't like
possible.
I'm not making any plans until
I figure last minute plans are going to be so easy to make with the pandemic, or maybe everyone's going to get vaccinated and everyone's going to immediately want to go on vacation. I don't know. That would be a terrible idea that will infect millions of people. But
yep,
we'll see if Portland is possible. Because it's going to be crazy. It's going to be like completely unlike anything. Because I don't know.
So many people are missing it. They just want like whatever the first video game convention is after like pandemic kind of loosens its grip on the world. Man, it's going to go nuts. People have been just like stockpiling. They've got it laying around. I'm excited to see what happens.
Like the buyers and the sellers are just like waiting for release. It's just going to be like throwing meat into a piranha thing and seeing what happens. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fucking pandemonium.
Make sure you get a seller's badge to whatever convention you do and get all the good deals before the floor opens. Pro tip from Collector's Quest.
Yep.
It'll be worth it, especially this year. Anyway.
Okay, so moving on.
All the games that are not more than $60, we'll just say. Starting out with, I'm going to say, a surprising one, despite how absolutely dirt common it is, Complete in Box. Donkey Kong Country, $46, which is definitely up. That's probably doubled during coronavirus times. Widely cited as people's favorite Super Nintendo game, barring like Mario and stuff, but very affordable. You have nothing to say about it because it's a monkey game. I understand. So how about your next one, Johnny? $60 for the 8.7 million selling Super Mario Kart.
First of its series, should be more. But it's there's so many of them. There's so many Super Mario Karts.
That's not it. You know that's not it. People like the Mario Kart 64, baby.
No.
Mario Kart 64 sold more and it's more expensive, Johnny.
But that doesn't mean it. Look, Super Mario Kart, again, it's the first of the series. It's the true first of the series. This is the one to get. It's the one to own. And then I guess you could play that garbagey N64 one if you want, but I would just move on and get a better one on GameCube, get Double Dash. And then after that, I would get Mario Kart 8, if that's what you're trying to play.
All right, well, I'll take your word for it because you're
or
the
actually
kart racing guy.
Mario Kart DS was also very good.
Yeah, I played that one.
I think that was Mario Kart 7. Yeah, it was a good
online.
One. Like you could play locally, like if you were just near your friend, you guys could just fire up and it was so good.
And everyone had a DS on them at that point.
Everybody had.
That was even like me, and I never. So everyone always had their DS on them. Oh man, life was good in like 2006, Johnny.
Man, that local thing you could do with DSs was like, it was like LAN parties while you traveled. It was so good.
Anyways. Super Mario Kart. What do we think?
Yeah, $60.
It's not really $60. I paid $100 for a really nice complete one. That one's probably held back by players' choice prices and condition issues.
Most likely.
But
again, I mean, that's
not crazy. It's on par with
It's
all
not-
the other classic Super Nintendo games, I think. After you
yeah. I
remove
mean,
the
if you're
player's choice
spending
prices.
$100 again, a classic. It's the start of the series. What do you want to say?
Street Fighter 2, Johnny, it only sold 6.3 million copies on Super Nintendo.
Oh, man.
Make sure you add in another 2,000 for the
Yeah,
IM 8-bit copies.
I feel like this one's really held back by the IM 8-bit prices.
And then you can maybe add in the 4.1 million Super Street Fighter 2 turbos and then the 2 million Super Street Fighter 2s. I don't know what to say about Street Fighter. All three of them are basically
It's
40
so
to 50
many
bucks.
editions of Street Fighter. Like, it's a game that should cost more.
It's
if there
held
was
back
only
just because
one.
it's split up, confusing, and it's so common as a result that there's so many releases and people probably just need one.
Oh man, that IM 8-bit copy.
It's that IM 8-bit copy, yes.
Also, like, why would they pick the bad version of the game too? God, get it. But no one's gonna play it.
I mean, you're not playing it, so you might as well just get the classic box art, right?
Yeah, make sure you open it to know if yours glows in the dark, and then also make sure you put it in a console to see if it catches fire. Just gotta get those digs in while I can. All right, moving on.
Killer Instinct, 3.2 million, $57. That's not surprising because Killer Instinct is not relevant. Even though I think there's a newish one, maybe on Xbox 360, but not relevant.
It's a series that just did not carry on well. And I know there are people clamoring for more Killer Instinct stuff.
But
Like,
it's never going to be
a dedicated
an A-list.
base.
I'm never going to be surprised that, like, Killer Instinct is never going to be like $1,000. Oh my god, you got to get the first Killer Instinct. Also, it's an arcade port, so I'm sure it's a compromised game on SNES, right?
Yep.
All right. Star Fox. First of all, Star Fox sold less than Killer Instinct. That's a little bit surprising to me. 3 million copies. Star Fox is a $45 game. I associate Star Fox as one of the big Nintendo franchises, but perhaps a franchise that has lost relevance over time because they cannot capture the first two games, and it always seems like they're grasping at straws trying to capture the first two games again.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the FX chip, right, when Star Fox came out, you were blown away by this, like, 3D flight game on the Super Nintendo, which now you look at and you're like, that looks god awful. Why am I doing this to my eyes trying to play this game? Yeah, they're just never. Also, like, the idea of that kind of flight sim game has gone away. Then they went to, like, remember they went and tried to do like a weird ground assault game for a while. Like, I don't know what that was.
They had Adventures, which was like Ocarina of Time.
Which, did people play that? Like, I think
people kind of like that.
But I don't know if
how
Star
common
Fox
it is, but like it's weird. It's like it was not super in line with the franchise, and then Star Fox Assault is like, oh, we're gonna try to do Star Fox 64 again, and then they did the Wii U one where people complained that you had to look at both the gamepad and the screen at the same time, and they hated it.
Yeah, and it's just never like it. It's got like Fox was in, Smash and stuff. He's a popular character. Like, I don't know. It's a popular franchise and popular in all regions. So I don't know what Nintendo has to do to get Star Fox back online, but you would think that they would try. Also, start of the series on the Super Nintendo, but obviously it wasn't that popular timing because Star Fox 2 never quite made it out. But, if you want a complete Super Nintendo set, make sure you get your SNES Classic, and that way you have Star Fox 2, right?
Speaking of
big eye roll
grasping
you
at
guys
just trying
can't
to
see.
recreate the first two games, since Star Fox 2 is technically like a 2017 release. Oh man, what a Star Fox ripoff! Am I right, Johnny?
Oh man, what a ripoff!
That's probably among the cheaper games that we're going to talk about, and it's the first Star Fox game and all that.
And then
maybe
we're
one day
getting to
Star
another
Fox will regain its grace. Star Fox seems like something Nintendo still cares about, even though like probably most popular is Fox McCloud as a Smash character because he's good in Smash, and like Falco is good in Smash.
Yep, Falcon Punch.
That's like an order of magnitude more popular than any other Star Fox game at this point.
Let's get on to the real Falcon Punch here.
And there is our segue to another supremely disappointing Nintendo franchise, F-Zero. 2.8 million copies sold. Amazing Super Nintendo game, just like every Super Nintendo game on the top selling list. $36. That is absolutely held back by Player's Choice.
And Player's Choice, you could get sealed for so long. I think you can still find them sealed for relatively cheap.
Yeah, that'll always be a joke just because there's so many. It's just like one of those games like Donkey Kong Land 3 on Game Boy. There's just like a ton of new old stock out there for whatever reason. But not the Black Label. But yeah, F-Zero, $36 is not going to break any records. I think it's... prices are so much higher than they used to be, but F-Zero is cheap relative to all the other amazing classic games on the list. Like, Yoshi's Island. It's less than Mario Paint. Like, F-Zero is a better game than Mario Paint. I don't care what accessories it comes with.
You know what's weird? Like, the space F-Zero held, like, Mario Kart in 8 got weird and, like, spacey and futury. Like, did that just kind of take F-Zero's place? They've tried to make a few of these Star Fox F-Zero style racers. There was one that released with the Switch that you could only buy in Japan that eventually came here. I forget what that was. That, like, tried to get it that I bought. That was pretty fun. I mean, like, people keep trying to get, like, an F-Zero style game to come back, but they just haven't made it happen.
I mean, people don't want bootleg F-Zero. They want Nintendo to take F-Zero GX and make it HD. And I don't mean like an HD remaster, like a new game in the style of F-Zero GX, which is super fast racing. And maybe that's on the horizon. Maybe I just don't remember. But, all right, that's it for Super Nintendo, Johnny.
There's a lot of games near and dear to my heart there.
Yeah, so the biggest outliers there would be Chrono Trigger, which is really expensive, and Donkey Kong Country, which is really cheap relative to the number of sales, I think.
Yep. Agree.
No, Donkey Kong Country is not cheap relative to sales because it's such a goddamn common game, but relative to, I guess, its relative popularity amid everything else. All right,
this is your favorite one.
Blew my mind looking up Nintendo 64 prices. We're going over every Nintendo 64 game that sold over 2 million copies worldwide.
Woo!
Did I list? Yes, I did put these in order. Super Mario 64, 12 million copies, $88. No surprise. Mario Kart 64, 10 million copies, $76. No surprise. I'm going to say GoldenEye is surprising. So GoldenEye 007, 8 million copies sold. It is $61 complete in box. And again, all these prices are so much higher than they used to be. When I see GoldenEye now, I think like multiple copies have sold for like $20,000 sealed. But in addition to that nonsense, if you ask people, like people in their 30s, their favorite N64 game, if it's not like Mario 64, I bet a lot of them would say GoldenEye because it's like the third best-selling game on the platform, and those aren't like Japanese sales. That's like
I mean, it's going to be Super Mario. It's going to be Mario, GoldenEye, or Ocarina, right? Like yes. Or like maybe Smash Brothers, an outlier, but
no, because everyone like Super Smash Brothers Melee has like replaced Smash Brothers in people's minds. I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's a much better game.
Yeah, but anyway, in this world where like Yoshi's Island is selling for $120 and Donkey Kong Country 3 is a $100+ game. GoldenEye, I'm surprised that the demand has not pushed it higher, I will say.
Especially they're both by Rare.
Weird. They're both Rare games.
No, I'm the company.
So yeah, I guess that's on the technically over MSRP list, but I'm giving it the outlier for being kind of low price relative to what I think the demand could be. Ocarina of Time, Johnny, $88 complete, $276 for the collector's edition, sold 7.6 million copies. It's the best game ever made, so any price, just like A Link to the Past.
That's not the best game ever made. It's not even the best Zelda.
So this is interesting. Is this interesting? $276 is a lot of money. What is up with that, Johnny?
People like a fancy box. And look, we've talked about this even recently on the show. It's the gold cart. Like, Zelda is supposed to be gold. You don't want this other gray bullshit. Like, I honestly think Link to the Past would sell for more if the fucking cart was gold.
Sure.
Not kidding. And they put that like metallic overlay on it. You know, think back in the 90s, like was chromium or whatever, and it's Zelda. They made it the cartridge gold. That means money.
So I don't know what to think about this, because Zelda Ocarina of Time, obviously a dirt common game, even the collector's edition.
But again, if you're going to collect this, which version would you rather have?
I mean, I'd rather have the collector's edition because that's the version I had as a kid.
Right. Well,
I don't even think that I might not even have a regular complete in box Ocarina of Time. I have to go check, and I'm not going to spend $100 on one.
Was the regular one, did it actually outsell the collector's edition? I can't remember how the collector's edition went.
I mean, I'm sure over the course of N64's life, because collector's edition was just available at launch. I'm assuming. I don't actually know that, but
yeah, but
that's what I would assume.
I don't know
so
what
it
the
must
numbers
have sold
are.
more gray cards. And like when you look at eBay, like they're all gray cards. So
okay, but again, that could be one of those people hoarding their special item. You know, I'm not getting rid of this one.
Anyway, it's hard to make this is the most common game ever and it's expensive judgment on a collector's edition when we don't have specific numbers for the collector's edition. But it is interesting to point out, Ocarina of Time is f***ing nuts.
Yeah.
Smash Brothers sold 5.5 million, $121. Pokemon Stadium sold 5.5 million. First in the series, sure. Pokemon Stadium sold 5.5 million, $135 for Pokemon Stadium.
I don't,
and that is because it says Pokemon in the front of it. That has like a recent price spike that goes directly upwards. That's not an interesting game. Also, not the first Pokemon Stadium game. First Pokemon Stadium game is the Japanese Pokemon Stadium, which is a different game. Diddy Kong Racing, 4.8 million copies, $65. Technically above $60, but sure. I highlighted the next one. What is it? Star Fox 64, Johnny.
Oh, Star Fox.
4 million copies, $92. That feels high to me, which is why I highlighted it, maybe.
I don't know.
Okay,
it's a big box and it comes with a rumble.
Okay, how about if I put it this way, Johnny? I'm going to line up Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, GoldenEye, regular Ocarina of Time, and Star Fox 64, and you have to point out the most expensive game. You're going to point to Star Fox?
Nope.
Okay. That's weird.
Well, I'm not going to, I'm definitely, to be honest, I'm probably going to point to Zelda and then point to Star Fox next.
I don't even know what I would point to. I don't know.
It's just because of the box and all the extras, right? But if I was looking at carts, I'm not picking Star Fox. So,
all right. Well, I didn't think this analogy out and have cart prices and all that lined up. But anyway, it's interesting.
It is interesting that it's like more expensive than Mario 64, a Mario that people love so very much, and GoldenEye, a game that people cite as their favorite. Like 3 of the most cited games that are the favorite on the system, and Star Fox for some reason is more expensive than those.
I mean, it's an awesome game, and it's strictly better than the SNES version because it basically replaces the SNES version. Sorry, Stefan. Banjo-Kazooie, 3.6 million copies, $100. Seems pretty normal. Pokemon Snap, 3.6 million copies, $100, except that Pokemon Snap is another game that had a price spike directly upwards because it has Pokemon in the title. If you're listening to this in the future, by the way, we are in early 2021. We're in late 2020. For some reason, I'm not even sure why, like everything Pokemon just went nuts. Pokemon cards, Pokemon video games.
Paul.
If you have Pokemon VHS tapes, I bet they're more expensive than they used to be. It's 1998 all over again.
Yeah, I want to say Logan Paul, but it might have been one of those guys.
Was that it? Was it Logan Paul? He bought a box of Pokemon cards for $250,000 recently.
Yeah, he spent like $1 million or something on Pokemon cards, and like people went nuts after that. It literally just this is his fault. Go blame him.
I'm mad. There's like men in their 50s looking at graphs and like buying up children's cards because Logan Paul, of all people, opened a box of sealed Pokemon cards and pulled out, Charizard and whatever.
One of the most hateable figures in boxing is Floyd Mayweather Jr. And they're supposed to fight, right? So I find myself in a weird conflict where, because I hate his style of boxing so much, just clenching and moving. Like, yeah, he's fine. He's a boxer. He's a great boxer. Whatever. He's just not enjoyable. I'm hoping he punches him in the face repeatedly for me having to hear about Pokemon so much.
Oh yeah, I just put an Instagram story out. So I was looking up Pokemon games for the show. So I'm just like, oh, I'll just go to price charting and type the word Pokemon in and just get all of them at once. And if you do that now, it shows you every Pokemon card because Pokemon cards are on price charting now.
Oh, God damn it. That's really...
Why does price charting track Pokemon cards? Don't they have like a billion TCG thing? Like TCGs probably have like some of the most developed marketplaces specifically for them that aren't eBay, right? Like TCG Player supports Pokemon.
They do. They sure do. You can find the price of all the cards.
All right. I mean, you got to keep up with the times. People want the Pokemans.
They sure do. Let's move on.
Anyway, Majora's Mask, 3.3 million sold, $130. I didn't even check the collector's edition for that. It's a Zelda game. Like, again, those aren't going to surprise me.
No.
It's 2.8 million for Yoshi's Story, $72. That seems kind of high, but again, it's a Nintendo.
That seems high to me. But again, yeah, okay, I guess.
I'm trying to keep it relative with everything. Like in a vacuum, it's high, but relative to everything else, like it's a little bit less than all the other popular N64 games.
True. I just don't ever hear people talking to me about Yoshi's Story.
Yep. Except for Stefan, he needed the black Yoshi plushie, I believe. Right? He needed one of the Yoshi plushies that's like super rare for no reason. I'm just assuming that's Yoshi's Story. Are there like multicolored Yoshis in the other games? I know there are, but is there like one game that has all the Yoshis in it? I guess like, I don't know. There's like the yarn games. I'm just going to move on. Yoshi. Overrated character. What? Right. Send your hate mail to Johnny_Iuchi. Mario Party. 2.7 million copies. $100 complete.
It's not even... Mario Party is such a bad game.
I mean, it spawned such a, like, probably, is that Nintendo's longest running numbered franchise?
Yeah, and people tell me the Switch version is good, which I don't understand. People who I know are Mario Party haters have, like, come around on Mario Party for the Switch. I don't know what this world is. I don't want to play any Mario Party.
I want to play Mario Party.
It's just not my jam. I'm not into it.
I mean, it's not surprising because it's a Nintendo game. Maybe it is surprising that it's more expensive than some of the top games like Mario 64 and Mario Kart.
GoldenEye.
But I guess it's
Ocarina
another game
of Time.
that people want to play.
It's more expensive than Star Fox.
Weird. I mean, does Mario Party have a player's choice version?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I think so. No, but I'm pretty sure. I could get up and look if you really wanted me to.
I want you to.
All right.
Hey, listeners, I'm just asking this because if games like GoldenEye and Ocarina of Time are dragged down by players' choice prices, I want to know if Mario Party is entirely black label prices or non-budget label prices. So, anyway, this is so off topic from what we've even been discussing. We're trying to find the most common, most expensive game. We're just kind of going through the prices of the most popular Nintendo games. It's a little check-in on the market, if nothing else.
So no, there isn't.
There isn't. So that would inflate the price a little bit then.
Yeah.
Pokemon Stadium 2, 2.5 million copies sold, $166. Guys, I didn't actually look at the price graph on it. I'm going to guess it is a flat line until 3 months ago, and then it goes straight up, or maybe March. I don't remember when the spike was. There's a clear spike for all the Pokemon games.
Why?
Who cares about Pokemon Stadium 2? And then Mario Party 2, 2.5 million copies, $125. Nothing surprising there. Notably, less than MSRP games, Johnny. Donkey Kong 64.
Woo!
5.2 million copies, $53. Relative to everything else on this list, that one stands out to me as weird. Much lower than all the other popular N64 games.
Did Donkey Kong 64, did it just not grab people the way the Super Nintendo ones did?
Donkey Kong, more people like Donkey Kong 64 than Donkey Kong Country 3, I think. And it sold twice as many on a console that was way less popular. Is that true? Is N64 less popular than SNES? Maybe that's not true.
I mean, yes. Like, look at the amount of games in the life cycle.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's go over the Donkey Kong timeline. So you have Donkey Kong, the arcade game, I don't know arcade game prices. Maybe coronavirus has affected them. I'm going to say $800, $1,200 will get you a Donkey Kong, probably. Maybe cheaper if you could put some work into it. Then you have Donkey Kong, which sold sealed on NES for $70,000 recently. So that's a bit of a price gap. And then you go to Donkey Kong Country, which is the cheap garbage of Super Nintendo. No one wants Donkey Kong Country. It was one of the ones in the below MSRP list.
Yeah, but 9.3 million of them made.
Yeah. So yeah, it is common. So that's part of it. But rarity doesn't matter anymore, Johnny. It's pure demand. Forget your little Samsons. It's 100% Mario and Zelda games from now on. And the Donkey Kong 64 is also in the below MSRP sad no one wants you list. Donkey Kong on NES, the shitty version of the arcade game, sold for $70,000. No one wants any of the other Donkey Kong games. All right.
I don't get it. Except that one is first, right? It's the first one.
Donkey Kong 64 is the first 3D Donkey Kong. First game where you could play as Lanky Kong. Is that true? That might not be true. Is Lanky Kong
No, I have never played a Donkey Kong.
Oh, you hate all these games. Okay. All right. Also, personal bias there because I like Donkey Kong 64. Honestly, top 10 platformer of all time to me. People are crazy that don't like that game.
To be clear, I've played Donkey Kong games where you are fighting Donkey Kong, like obviously arcade Donkey Kongs and stuff. None of the Country or Kong 64 or anything Ford, Blizzard, Country or whatever it is. Never, not once. Not even a demo.
Okay. All right. So that was the last kind of interesting N64 one. I thought Donkey Kong 64 seemed relatively underpriced. Although I understand that the point of this episode is looking for games that are uncommonly expensive. Everything else in N64 kind of boring. $3.1 million for Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. It's like $30. 3 million copies for Wave Race. It's like $30. $2.5 million for Shadows of the Empire. It's like $35. Perfect Dark. 2.5 million copies. $39. So Perfect Dark is interesting because it has that core of people who will swear up and down that it's 100% strictly better than GoldenEye. It probably doesn't have as much of a fan base as GoldenEye, but price
doesn't have the license appeal. Like James Bond has greater appeal.
I don't even think about that. Like doesn't even register in my brain. But yeah, James Bond. It's not a James Bond game. The price of Complete in Box Perfect Dark has been suppressed for so long because forever, new old stock copies are readily available. They used to be like $60. I don't know what they are now. 90, 100, maybe a little more. But there's a lot of new old stock, and that's like weird because it's a super popular game, but the Complete in Box price can't approach the new price, or you would just buy a new copy of Perfect Dark. So that's just kind of an interesting case where the price will probably never be one of these crazy outliers. Mario Tennis, 2 million copies is $50. I think the first Mario Tennis was on Game Boy Color, so that's not even a first appearance, Johnny.
Nope.
Rogue Squadron, 2.2 million copies, $35. 1080 Snowboarding, 2 million copies, $30. And Excite by 64, 2 million copies, $30. All these kind of $30 games that are sold a lot, but they're not the big flashy Nintendo franchises. They're the sad, less flashy Nintendo franchises like 1080 Snowboarding, which is a fine game. Johnny, you put what were you saying?
I said, no, they aren't, they're not flashy.
Okay. So those are NES, SNES, and N64, the top selling games for each. I will say that we already kind of went over. I think the N64 prices in general are the most surprising thing, that they are so much higher than like NES. Like Ocarina of Time is way more expensive than the average Legend of Zelda. Like not your first print, like whatever, hoo-ha, Legend of Zelda, but like Ocarina of Time is more expensive than the Legend of Zelda. And what's another good example? I don't know. Like Banjo-Kazooie is more expensive than DuckTales. Like people want N64 games more than NES games. And I was an adamant believer 5 years ago, probably, that there wouldn't be this shift of nostalgia where like people would grow up and like kind of age out of NES and Super Nintendo and age into N64 and GameCube. I was always like, no, people aren't that stupid. They're going to recognize N64 is garbage and GameCube is full of multi-platform nonsense, this dumb controller, and they're going to know NES is the most important Nintendo system. Everyone's just going to always keep collecting NES, and it's just not the case. My opinion has been completely disproven. The wave of nostalgia is currently riding through N64 and GameCube, even though we're not going over GameCube prices.
Yeah, I mean, we can just talk real quick. The two best selling games on GameCube are Smash Brothers and Mario Kart. Smash Brothers sold 7.4 million copies, and it's like a $60 game to $70 game. So that's not super high, but that's high-ish for GameCube. Not in the top, because those are usually games that sold a little less, harder to find. But Mario Kart, a game that sold 6.9 million copies and had all kinds of different store variants. That's an $86 game. So, to a $70 game, depending on which version you're buying. So those are some notable, very common, still pretty expensive, above MSRP games from GameCube. And then here's where...
Also, notably for GameCube, everything we were talking about before, cardboard box games, like way harder to find complete in box, like everything on GameCube is going to be complete by comparison. So it's crazy that these prices are even like in the same realm as the cardboard box games.
Yeah, I mean, and those 7.4 million copies, like a good chunk of those should be complete. Of the 9.3 million Donkey Kong countries that sold, a lot less of those are going to be in nice, good, complete condition. Well, most of those will be carts, not boxes. So something to consider. So we also did a quick little run up on Game Boy, and this is where I think most common, most expensive really lives, right here. Tyler, do you disagree?
It is biased because Game Boy boxes were thrown out more than console boxes. But
true.
Yes, if you were looking for the numerically most common game with the highest price, Game Boy is going to be it.
Yeah, so your Pokemon Yellow is a $230 game. And if you saw that Heritage Auction one closed, for some insane price, there's almost 15 million Pokemon Yellows out there. So not hard to get. Now, here's where it gets crazier. Pokemon Red, $240, and Pokemon Blue, $205, and they combine these as one thing for some reason, even though they're unique titles. But 31 million copies of that combination sold. So, it gets pricey.
I don't think we can overstate 31 million copies, one of the best-selling games ever, period, bar none, across anything. And it's still selling for over $200 easy for a nice complete in box.
Yeah, and even the carts on those aren't cheap. So they're still expensive relative to...
We haven't been looking up cart prices, but Pokemon is such a thing right now. I got to look up what a Pokemon Red is. God, I look up Pokemon Red, and there's a card set called Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, and it brought up every single card from that set on price charting. JJ, if you're listening, take all this garbage off your website.
He's not listening. He doesn't care.
Yeah, but Pokemon Red's $27. And it's always been a $20
But that
game.
price is probably skewed wrong due to all the fakes. Because there's so many fakes of these games.
Maybe. So it's always kind of been a $15-$20 game, and now it's just got a slight trend upward, and that makes sense to me just because Johnny, there's a lot of Pokemon games, including fakes. I know.
Yeah, there is a tremendous amount of them. But yeah, expect to pay at least $30 for a cart. But Game Boy carts aren't that expensive holistically, right? There's so many of them. If the average cart is around $18 on Game Boy, and these are averaging around $30, so it's almost double the average. So, or 1/3 higher than the average, 33% higher. Anyways, that's a very significant jump. Also very common and not that expensive relatively, but this is the interesting ones that Tyler would look at. $46 for a complete Super Mario Land, depending on the print. But there was 18 million of them. That's no slouch. Everybody, if you had a Game Boy, you had Super Mario Land. Super Mario Land 2 is more expensive, around $75. but there was 11.1 million of those sold. So with that many sold and that price, that's still pretty high. So
it's pretty high. Like the only good thing about these Game Boy games that sold like ridiculous numbers is that it's really easy to find the Mario Land games complete. So
yeah,
that's what you get out of that. Also, just going back to Pokemon for a second, Pokemon Red sells for $35 more than Pokemon Blue. And I thought, in my brain, I just always thought that people thought the same as me. The original two Pokemon games were Green and Red in Japan, and then Blue was the one that came afterwards. So I always thought, like, oh, people give more respect to Red because it came out at the same time in America, but it feels more original. But no, it's just because fucking Charizard is on the cover, and people are obsessed with Charizard. That's the only reason. Oh my god.
That's the world we live in.
It's a world of Charizards, Johnny.
People love a Charizard. You know, Charizard is a Pokemon I knew before I knew anything about Pokemon. Charizard has always been, as the kids say, fire.
Shut up, Johnny.
Can I not say that? Is that not all right?
No, you're right.
All
Shut up, Johnny. You're making more dollars than cents. What was it? I'm getting a little tired, Johnny.
Okay, you're getting punchy. Let's wrap it up.
I wanted to bring up two more Pokemon games. Ruby and Sapphire are like $200. I don't have the list up. I think those are the best-selling GBA games, and they're $200. And this is so. I don't have like boxes in front of me. I'm not looking at eBay or anything. The Pokemon craze happened, 1999, 2000, where everyone knew that Pokemon was the coolest thing ever. So even if people were like throwing out their GBA boxes and things, I would think that more people would keep their Pokemon GBA boxes just because they know Pokemon is the coolest thing ever. And, this stuff's going to be worth something one day. Also, Pokemon is a game that encourages you to collect things. So maybe you'd want to keep your Pokemon box and put it next to your Pokemon McDonald's toys and all your other Pokemon doodads.
No.
Most common GBA games on planet Earth, and they're still $200. And the other weird thing, Pokemon Emerald is $262, and it's the third most common GBA game. I thought Pokemon Emerald was like not rare, but like I thought it was like, oh, this is a somewhat shorter printed Pokemon game. It's the third most common GBA game on planet Earth. Bananas to me. It costs more than Red and Blue. Someone explain Pokemon Emerald to me. I don't need it to explain. Never mind. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver are my favorite games, and those sell for astronomical prices. It's just because that's, whatever generation that played the GBA Pokemon games, that's the one they play. All right. Anyway, what's the winner, Gianni? What is, out of these games that we looked at, what is the most common, most expensive game?
Outside of the Pokemon games?
No, just pick a game.
Pokemon. Yellow. Only because it has a definitive, like it's not combined with Red and Blue.
No, I mean, like Pokemon Red, even if you split the 31 million down the middle, Pokemon Red is still more expensive. Or it still has slightly... Shut up, Tyler. Yeah, it's probably Pokemon Red.
Yeah, it's
or you can say Pokemon.
I mean, it's all in there. Like, I just don't know. Like 14.6 million versus 31.3 divided by 2, so it's like 15.5. But I don't know if more was skewed towards Red, right? So it's probably Red because of Charizard, but if not, it's yellow.
Johnny, I just wanted for comparison to look up Pokemon Heart Gold, and I typed in the price charting, and there's a TCG set called Pokemon Heart Gold, and it brings up every card.
Well, look, it's a video game site. No one's probably going to look up Pokemon stuff there, so don't worry about it. Chrono Trigger is also one that was like, the game is expensive. It did only sell 2 million copies, so it's on the lower end of an astronomical amount of games sold. But $500 is $500. I think that's the most expensive game we have listed here. So,
yeah. I think like Chrono Trigger is clearly not as common as the Pokemon GBA games. Like even complete in box Pokemon Game Boy games, Red and Blue and Yellow. There's a million of them out there, even if they're being bought up more than they've ever been bought up in the past, 4 months. Those will come back to market. There's always more out there because everyone had these games, everyone hoarded them. And I think Chrono Trigger, despite being rarer, it is still common and still an astronomically high price for what it is. But also
$500 is a lot of money.
An excellent game.
For a game. It's one of the definitive Super Nintendo games. Definitive RPG. Some people would argue the best on the system. Like people argue that in Final Fantasy 3, and I can see arguments for both. My favorite RPG there is Final Fantasy 2 because I like the story better, but Chrono Trigger has an excellent story and it's got replayability. It's hard to argue against. Yeah.
And I realize we've said to death, the Heritage Auction people, not maybe the most knowledgeable or, I don't know, but there's a Chrono Trigger sold for $40,000. Something like that. Like multiple copies have sold for ridiculous sums like that, I think. But you'll notice that whenever we're talking about the ridiculous games, it's Super Mario Brothers, Mario 3, Donkey Kong, like all these like super core Nintendo franchises, and Chrono Trigger is selling among those games, and that is a Squaresoft game. So there's a lot of respect for Chrono Trigger from whoever has a lot of money. Because it's a great game. Anyway. So our conclusion based on completely subjective, no criteria analysis is that Pokemon Red and Chrono Trigger, and maybe Pokemon Yellow, and probably every Pokemon game, are the most common, most expensive games.
Woo! But everything we listed here, is kind of a runner for that. So,
well, I mean, we listed everything. We listed Tetris because we just listed the best-selling games.
Well, I mean, we listed that, but that one wasn't expensive. You should own a complete copy of Tetris if you don't.
So either it's the most common, most expensive, or you should own it. But also, if it's the most common, most expensive, it's because it's an awesome game. So basically, every game we just listed, you should own.
I mean, if I was a collector only collecting good stuff, there's not too many things I would strike from this list. And if you were looking
Stadium
for a thing,
2, you are struck.
Yeah,
$166, no.
But things like Tetris that, are $19, you should have a nice copy of Tetris. Go spend $30 to get a nice copy of Tetris. What are you guys doing? Okay. Tyler, anything else to add on this?
No. How long have we been recording this for?
It's like 2 hours.
2 hours just listing prices and sales figures. I hope anyone listens to this episode, Johnny.
Me too. But we do these kind of episodes once in a while, and people will forgive us for throwing numbers at them insanely. I hope it was easy enough to follow along. That's what I hope. Now let's tell the people what you bought this round. What'd you buy?
Johnny, I did not prepare. Let me check my eBay history real quick. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, you go.
I'm like, I'll go while you look that up. I bought some GBA games. I bought, if you don't know, Coffee with Mr. Saturn on Instagram. He always has like little stockpiles of GBA games and other random bits he finds. And I bought some stuff from him and some of the weird stuff I've been showing off lately, including that Toy Story 2 and, Strawberry Shortcake. Those are games I got from him. So I got GBA stuff, like one of the expensive BattleBots games, the stupid MLB game that is expensive. And I've been buying, Star Wars stuff. So I'm waiting for the inflection point where Star Wars becomes popular enough, and you would think it would already be there, that people would pay more attention to the games as collectibles. I think for a long time they like sat in this like, oh, they're movie games, so they're bad. But like the Star Wars Super Nintendo games were pretty good, and there's a lot of pretty good Star Wars games. N64 has a bunch, weirdly, on that system. So, and they are very good sellers, but they're usually not very expensive. And it might just because they are so dirt common.
Probably because they're so dirt common and they don't have the cachet of the other dirt common games, which are like Nintendo and Rareware games.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for that crossover appeal to finally happen where, like, I guess they're just so common anyone can get them. But yeah, I'm just, Star Wars games. The crossover appeal with who, cheap. Though? Star Wars collectors. There's a lot of Star Wars collectors.
Are there a lot of Star Wars collectors?
Yes.
Are there more Star Wars collectors than game collectors?
I don't know.
Who knows? How weird is it that one franchise can rival an entire medium? Like, we don't even know.
Well, I mean,
I
don't
know
if
what? I
that's
bet there's
true,
more
but-
Star Wars collecting podcasts than video game collecting podcasts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I bet they
there's a
don't have
lot.
their one website shut down and everyone like scrambles and like, oh, we're in a bunch of Facebook groups over here and we have one website.
Well, I mean, and it's a lot easier to collect Star Wars figures, like to get in the door, right? Because you can go start in the Black Series and spend like $10, $20 a figure and be like in the thick of what people are hot for right now. Which is not like, you can't just, I mean, I guess you can do that with card only stuff, but you can't just go back to Nintendo and be like, let's go pick up complete box Super Mario Brothers for $20.
You can get a Mario Duck Hunt though.
Sure can. Unless Chris buys them all.
He just
Beware of
showed me a
CWR2.
misprint Mario Duck Hunt out of his 500 copies. He's got one where the seal of quality is printed like
Woo.
half a centimeter off. It's like, oh, well, it is technically a misprint. It's kind of cool.
You guys
And,
just wait. Just wait. I'm just telling people, I think I'll do just like, because no one cares about Star Wars, I'll just make it like a special episode only for Patreon members where I like do a deep dive on stupid Star Wars games, do like 15, 20 minutes talking about all the asinine variants of Star Wars games.
And I'll do an addendum with PC variants. I
Please
don't even
do.
know that they exist. I'm going to have to do so much research, Johnny.
That researching
And no
PC
one's
Star
gonna
Wars
care.
games sounds like the worst.
Why don't we just go on with what you've been playing, Johnny?
What have I been playing? Well, I did play through Jedi Fallen Order again. What else? I started playing just because I've been on a Star Wars kick. Since I'm researching, I started playing the campaign for Battlefront 2 because I'd never played that. And that game is
Battlefront
glitchy.
2, the second Battlefront 2?
Yeah, the Xbox One, PS4 era one.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of games called Star Wars Battlefront. Yeah, this one, that game, I like it, but it is buggy. I can't tell you how many times to like hit restart because my character is like embedded in the terrain and I can't move. I'm just like, really? Like, I had a really awesome one where you start out as Han Solo and you like go to walk and then he just starts floating into space. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And
Modern video games are happening.
It just keeps going. But like, it isn't new, but I also know that the Battlefront servers like recently moved or bought or shifted and things have been going crazy since, but I'm playing the campaign. This shouldn't affect that. Anyways, I guess people don't care about campaign on those kinds of games, but it's not like I want to go like try and jump into, online play for Battlefront 2. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's go just die a bunch. Learn how to play.
You could just play the campaign and then shut it off and never play it online.
That's probably what I'm going to do.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Anyways, what did you buy?
Not a lot, Johnny. I did get, what is it? It translates to the Crime Abbey. It's La Abadía del Crimen. It is it's a set of stamps based on like an Amstrad CPC game in Spain or something. And you put your finger over the stamps and it unveils doors and they all look like these cute little 8-bit dudes.
Okay,
I think they're the cutest 8-bits. They're the coolest video game stamps that have ever been made, Johnny.
Did you fucking rewind to the start of 2020 and start on stamps again? What did you do?
No.
Are you in some loop?
No. So this is
That's what you did in 2020.
No.
You keep bringing up stamps.
I'm sending out my wedding thank yous. We had to put stamps on them. It had me thinking about stamps. It made me go get stamps to put on the cards, and I went and looked at my collection of video game stamps, and I realized that I have a favorite video game stamp based on all the research I did, but I never actually went and bought it. And stamps are worthless. Stamps are basically worth face value. So I went and I spent $10 on a sheet of my favorite video game stamps. Some obscure Spanish computer game I've never heard of, but it looks super cool because they're like the only stamps that actually look like pixel art.
I will tell you, I have Star Wars stamps. They are worth nothing.
What I actually bought, another thing you will equally not care about, Wizardry, the Fourth Scenario, The Return of Wordna for the Apple II.
Nice.
just to add to my wizardry collection. A game notable because on Wikipedia, the difficulty section is the longest section out of gameplay, reception, and whatever other sections there are, because the game is extremely difficult, apparently, because it was made by an asshole. Excellent, I say. And then I bought the Ninja Gaiden computer game. I didn't expect to win it, but I threw in a bid and I ended up winning it for like $40, which seems
reasonable.
Yeah. It's the beat 'em up though, so I'll never play it. Also, I'm never gonna play it regardless. But that's really it. I wasn't really buying much. I'm playing Wasteland 3, which I think I already talked about, and RuneScape, which definitely doesn't need to be talked about.
Click. RuneScape.
Yep.
Played it.
Yep. If you play Cookie Clicker, you want to do that for 2,000 hours? 7,000 hours to max, I think. So 7,000 hours.
Ooh, get there. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. Do we have anything else to say?
No.
If you guys haven't already, go check out the Patreon is live. So if you want to throw money at us for doing this, 1, thank you. 2, don't we're still going to do this, but if you want to, people have asked, I'm a horrible salesman for this thing. I'm like, I guess you don't have to. If you would like to donate though, we're not doing too much extra. We do get you over on the Patreon for any amount of donation. We start at $2 and it goes to $6. It's like a monthly thing. Don't go more than that $6. If you already paid more than that, we love you for the idea of that, but just dial your thing back to $6. Don't go over that. We don't I don't want this to don't donate if you can't. Only if you have extra, or if you feel like we save you $1, $2 a month, or $6 a month with the knowledge we give you, or you're getting that much in deals better and you feel like we're worth it, then please go over to that. And that's patreon.com/collectorsquest and find us and pick a level. Like I said, you'll get access to the Patreon. The Patreon has a couple different levels. Everyone it'll give you access, I keep saying to the Patreon, to our Discord. And that has a couple of different levels. The basic level, you get in there and we would love to chat with you there, has access for us. The better thing though is if you're not the better, but if you're donating a little more, whenever we do a special secret stupid episode, or after Collector's Quest After Dark, or pre-show talks, when we lay that kind of stuff down so it isn't in our normal feed, we'll put it in a special link on where you can find it there for people who are donating at, I think, the $4 level and above, and you'll get special titles for whatever you're donating at. But yeah, go check that out. Pick a level. It's the best way to interact with us. We have the Facebook stuff, but really Facebook is the worst. Instagram is fine, but Facebook is the absolute worst. Even if Instagram and that Facebook are owned by the same people, I would much rather talk to you on our Discord server than Facebook. So
I don't check the Facebook thing. So you're basically talking to Johnny. Send me a message on Instagram if you want to talk to me.
Yes, that is 100% true. I'm really bad about checking the Facebook thing. Really, I use Facebook to post pictures of my son for family members that I don't see very often, and I try to avoid it because of all the politics and all the other crazy stuff that happens on Facebook. And I know Tyler is younger, so he's like, Facebook, that's for old people like Johnny. So that's why he's not there. But the Discord, we could talk on. So we already have one member who came in hot and early, who I still owe buttons to. I have not forgot. I have them in an envelope. I just got to get to a post office for you. But
it's Richard Head, Johnny. You got to shout out the patrons because they like hearing their names.
Well, I was going to get his Instagram name before I did, but I didn't know if he wanted me to shout out his actual name. What? But
that's his video game sage name. I don't know his Instagram name. Damn it, Johnny.
Oh, is that his name on video game sage name?
I don't know. I know his name, so I know he didn't just show up in Discord and pick a random name. His name is not Richard Head, unless it is. He's so thrilled that he's getting his name shouted out 4 times. Anyway. Obviously we do this as a hobby. This is don't donate to us. It's not gonna, you could donate to us, but it's we're not gonna gate shows behind Patreon or anything. Johnny has been paying for this show out of his pocket for 5 years. He pays monthly for SoundCloud Premium, and we get like absolutely nothing from this show. Like, and I spend all this time editing it just because I love Collector's Quest. So
yeah, and we're
just trying to pay for
tell
this.
you, yeah, I can tell you where the money will go. One, it will like start to flatten out the cost that I pay, and then eventually we'll dump some of that into the Discord server. And also, I would like to pay Tyler a little bit for his time, because really anyone who has to edit 2.5 hour shows every single time and does it mostly without complaining, and I can't blame him, and I hold nothing against him for any of his complaints, but he does it, and he does it lovingly because he loves this show and he believes in it. So again, thank you, Tyler, always for that. So we're not like making a bunch of money. We're not we're not like trying to quit our jobs or anything. But if you can afford to, and only if, then and you want to, then please do. And then where the money, any excess will start to go, will be improvements. If someone's equipment fails, then like that'll be a thing we like start talking about, or better soundboards, better stuff for Tyler to make his life easier. And then it would be about making sure we can get to conventions to see the people and, say hi to you guys and have more access, and then maybe do panels and things like that. Stefan is like a big wig, and he's like floating around with all of his art and stuff. But Tyler and I are just little guys, and no one cares about bringing us places. So
Johnny's
we
in the trading
ourselves.
room. You could buy some Sega Genesis games from him.
Yeah, see, that's how lowly we roll. We're in a trading room. The convention's happening over here. Well, if you go out the hall and around the corner, you can find Collector's Quest. Yeehaw! Yeah. Anyways, that's what your Patreon dollars will get. I didn't want to promise like a bunch of extra shows or like special things we're going to mail you out. Of course, I will love and try to do some of that stuff, but I don't want to make promises we can't keep. And then that was always like one of my things. We can't deliver more show. What are we going to deliver? So people have asked for access to things that we keep hidden, but aren't the show. That's the kind of stuff. If we do some special dumb episodes, like I said, if I want to talk about Star Wars for 20 minutes, wouldn't be an episode I would normally air, except for back in 2015 when this show started and did very poorly. Now I'll like throw it up there for you guys to listen to. That's the kind of stuff we'll do. And keep the podcast episode guide a little bit cleaner, hopefully just to numbered episodes.
All right, Johnny, I have a special update here.
Okay.
That special update will preempt 1,000 emails. It is Chrono Trigger. We said that it sold obviously more in Japan. It sold a ton more in Japan, is what we should have said. Chrono Trigger sold 289,000 copies in United States, which is an order of magnitude less. It is a lot less than any of the other games on our list. So while it is the most expensive game, it is technically not on the same level as something like Pokemon Red. So I think Pokemon Red, or maybe Pokemon Yellow, is the clear winner of this episode.
Okay. Fair enough. And I will I want to get back to our Patreon, our first Patreon, our very firstest. We should probably give him like a special title, like first or something, special color to his name on the Discord server, but it is Doug_Mackenzius. So I will tell you that is not Richard Head.
Wait,
though
what?
That's what his name. Yeah. His name is Richard, but I'm not going to say his last name, but like, there we go.
Wait, are Doug Mackenzius and Richard Head the same person?
Yeah.
You are blowing my mind. No one cares about this, Johnny. We got people who listen to this show who just want to hear about video games.
I know, but we're telling him thank you for like being very aggressively first. I thank you for that. Thank you.
But I didn't even know the Patreon was launched and we already had a patron. Who knows?
Well, like, cause the only reason he, became first because I owed him some buttons from a while ago and I couldn't remember who I did. And I mentioned it on the show once. Then he contacted me and then he was like, get that Patreon live. And it was like right after I had launched it, but we hadn't officially announced it. And I'm like, yeah, it's live. But I didn't give him a link or anything. He just went and found it and was like, boom, done. He was first. I was like, oh, holy shit. What? I was like, I wasn't even ready for this. There's no one to talk to. I'm not even really in the Discord yet because hadn't done an announcement. So, anyways, that's it. I'll probably do an announcement. You probably are now hearing this for the second time because I'll probably do like an official Patreon announcement in the intro to this show before it goes up. Anyways, and you'll probably see me posting on Instagram and Tyler as well. But before you hear this, but that's all irrelevant because that's the past and this is now the future. All right, Tyler, where can we find you?
Buying a copy of Kid Icarus on eBay because it's an underrated gem. I mean, Video Game Sage and Instagram, and I guess YouTube. I'm Default Gen.
And on Discord, we can also find you.
Oh, and on Discord.
Yeah.
With our fancy new logo.
Yeah, we got new logos. Woo. Hey, Ada, thank you very much for doing that. I hope you hear this while editing. And then you can find me at Johnny_Iuchi, and you can find me on the Collector's Quest Discord by invite only. Sorry, guys. So if you are a Patreon, you will find me there. And I'll be under host, and I think our text is in purple. So that's it. All right, that's it for the show. Thanks so much for listening to all of this rambling that we did this episode. We appreciate it. And if you're donating and want to be a member, thank you for that as well, for joining us on Patreon. All right, everybody. Bye.
All right. I'm going to bed. God damn it.